Yo!
Yo!
Hi, Manipool. How's it going?
How you doing?
It's me,
In case you've forgotten, we are calling you the Manipool now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We should explain why I just said that out of nowhere. So someone, I can't remember who it was, but speak up if it was you, had a great idea of just calling you guys the Manipool. And I'm like, oh, yeah. That's great.
It's a great idea.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jordan, by the way. He already said he was Garav.
I did say that. And then yeah. Cool. I'm Garav still. And together we're the Dorks.
Dorks.
Someday we'll figure out how to do this.
We're, if you haven't noticed, in fact, if you haven't noticed, you're not hearing this, but we are streaming on YouTube today.
Where are we?
I don't know.
What is this strange red-colored box? I'm used to purple.
It's crazy here.
It's wild. It was James Roden. Thank you for that Manipool idea.
Yeah.
Yes, solid idea, and we will steal all of your ideas. Send us your ideas. We'll steal them.
Very good idea.
And we'll forget to credit you.
I think if you're really new to Magic, I'm not sure they use the term mana pool on cards. It's still like a concept in the thing. But when your mana's just like floating around before it's been used, that's your mana pool, and it empties at the end of each turn. It used to show up on cards, like they would talk about like your mana pool doesn't empty, but I don't think it does anymore.
There was a card that recently had that sort of wording.
I really don't think they ever used the word mana pool anymore.
Doesn't exist anymore. But we're gonna make it exist, okay?
Yeah.
We're gonna make it exist.
But that's okay, because you're the mana pool now.
You're the mana pool, which empties at the end of every phase. But don't leave at the end of every phase, because that would be silly.
No.
This is the untap phase where we just check in with each other and see what's up and check in with you guys. How's it going? How was your week? What was this week? No, it wasn't 4th of July. That was last week. This week was the week after 4th of July, which some people celebrate even more than 4th of July because they're like, oh man, that busy weekend's over. Now I get to do regular stuff.
Or like it could coincidentally be their birthday or something.
It could also be that. And they're like, oh, America's birthday. What about my birthday?
It could be a big week.
Yeah, it could be a big week. How was your big week, if you had a big week?
I went and saw Paul McCartney on Saturday.
Right, yeah.
So that was awesome.
One of the Beatles.
Yeah, and
that's bonkers.
Ringo Starr showed up.
Oh, yeah, Ringo Starr.
They did a song together, so I was like, hey, it's all of the remaining Beatles.
Man, that's so cool.
Right?
I've never seen any of the Beatles live, and
now I've seen
I probably should because they're getting...
the ones who were dead.
Well, go to the graveyard. You could see them. Wait, what graveyard would they be in?
I have no idea.
Someone look that up. What graveyard are the rest of the Beatles in?
Yeah.
Yoko's not dead, though, right?
No, Yoko's alive.
You can still see Yoko, and technically she was in the Beatles, right?
She has art exhibits and stuff. She wasn't in the Beatles.
But didn't she do a song or something?
She might have. Yeah, no, she did.
So technically she was in the Beatles.
Because she collaborated on a lot of John Lennon's later songs.
Right.
But I don't think she was ever really in it.
Yeah.
And Pete Best is still out there somewhere.
Who's that?
Pete Best was in the Beatles before they went to Germany and became, like, successful.
Really?
Yeah, he performed in Liverpool with them. His mom made a club in her basement that, like, was where the Beatles performed first. And it was called the Casbah, and I've been to the Casbah.
Wow, you are a big Beatles fan.
He did sing Band on the Run, and it was great. I really love Band on the Run, and I think... Band on the Run, the thing I love about it is it starts out like so like low key.
Yeah.
And I just love that freaking intro to the whole thing. It was really good.
So I'm going to ask you this, but I also want to know you guys. What's your favorite Beatles song?
My very favorite Beatles song? I don't know. It's hard to like pin down.
Mine is Yesterday.
Yesterday's really good.
I love Yesterday. And I hope some people add it to our playlist tonight because I'd love to hear some Beatles tonight.
I feel like if I like went down a list of Beatles songs, I would be able to... Oh, it's While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Okay, wow. All right.
I had to think of it. I was like, come on, where is it? Yeah.
That's the one. All right, cool. Who are we, Jordan? Upkeep.
Well, wait, how was your week?
Oh, we should ask... Oh, yeah, I'm a person too. My week was fine. Today... I was very excited because I got a standing desk at work.
Oh!
And it's not just standing desk. It's one of those like mechanical, electronic goes up and down presets.
I have one of those.
Yeah. It's, oh man, it changes your life. It's so great. I've only had it for a day and I'm like, this is amazing. I love
used it like nonstop for like 4 months.
Yeah.
And that was like a year and a half ago.
Oh, wait, usually you don't use it anymore?
Oh no, I mean I use it as a desk.
Oh, it just doesn't go up and down?
I mean I don't put it up. It does.
Okay, well, maybe tomorrow. Give it a whirl.
Sure, I should. It's a great idea.
It's good. But yeah, I'm very excited to have a standing desk. That's the biggest part of my week.
Nice.
It wasn't as good as seeing the Beatles, I guess, but we can't all see the Beatles, can we? Thanks for the invite, by the way. Must have got lost in the mail. Upkeep. We are saving throw. Are we?
We are.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. We're Saving Throw. We are an independent channel. We are not backed by any big sponsor or anything like that. So we run almost entirely, like the vast majority of what we get is from tips from people who watch what we're doing and like it and want us to be able to keep doing it. And people like you provide that. But we don't want to just say, okay, give us money and that's it. So we like to provide things that you can get.
Yeah.
Normally on our RPG shows, we do it as tiers. So as everybody donates, it unlocks different tiers and things happen in the shows. But the way we like to do it here on Mana Dorks is more of an a la carte menu. So I don't think, because we're on YouTube now, I don't think our commands work, but Dom is in the chat.
Boom, there it is.
And he will post a tweet to the things you can get from us, which you can add songs to our playlist that we're going to be playing all night. You can join in to go against us. You can get a custom token that Gaurav will make. And if we hit a certain level, everyone who donated over a certain amount, which is what's
$10 the min.
Anyone who's donated $10
or if you were a new sub.
Or if you were a new sub.
We're not on Twitch today, so it doesn't matter. Don't
Right.
worry about subs tonight.
But if we get to a certain level, everyone who did 10 or more will be sent out a custom token that is made by Gaurav. And tonight, we're doing something special.
Yes.
So everyone...
Where is it? Oh, there it is.
Every time you tip $2, you will be entered in a raffle. And you'll get whatever it is you were tipping for otherwise. But we are also giving away one of these Guilds of Ravnica bundles. These are... This is not the newest set, but these are awesome. These bundles have 10 booster packs inside them of the Guilds of Ravnica, which will be in standard... So standard is going to rotate in the fall, and this will still be in standard. So this is going to be relevant for the next...
A couple years-ish.
Yeah.
A little less than a couple years.
And this includes 10 booster packs, a foil version of each basic land, which is actually the only place you can get the basic lands from this set specifically. And then 75 cards of just basic lands. And this box, which actually, these boxes are great. I use them to store cards.
They're great for storing cards, yeah.
Forever. And then a player's guide, which has like it's a little booklet that has all the cards in the set and can tell you a little bit about them.
Yes.
These are very cool. They're very neat to get. It also has like a spin down from one of the guilds inside it. And we have these from Broken Pack stuff. And so we wanted to give them to you guys.
Yeah.
So... For every $2 you tip, you have an entry in the raffle. If you tip $5, that's just 2.
Yeah.
So even 2 numbers is great.
We have a few of these left over, and Dom wouldn't just let me and Jordan keep them.
Because he's a monster.
We legally have to give them away now.
Yeah.
But if you guys want, you could just give them to me if you win.
Totally allowed.
You could just say, Gaurav has all these, you could just cake all these cards. I would love them, but you don't have to do that. It's a little fine print. This is North America only. The tokens that I send are... the tokens I send are North America. This is USA only. So remember that. Yeah,
because it costs us a lot to ship it.
Yeah.
And we just can't afford to ship it outside of the US.
Yeah.
We would love to, but it's just not reasonable.
It's expensive. That's the giveaway. I think we're ready to play some Magic the Gathering. Anything unlocked that we need to go through now? Or
so far, we have unlocked... Oh, Gunslinger Andy. I was going to say Gunslinger Randy, and then I was like, people don't know that joke here as much. And so I went back to Gunslinger Andy, and I realized I said Gunslinger Andy. Gunslinger Andy has unlocked playing against us.
Oh, I see.
Oh, boy.
Well, we'll get to that when we get to the combat step.
And then Bowtie Guy bought a token.
Oh, Mr. Bowtie Guy. Hello, James. Yes, he has gotten... I think he's already got one in the pipeline, which is Amir doing the "This is fine" meme with just having a coffee mug with fire everywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what this one's going to be.
Yeah,
he's got a whole Mir thing going on.
I've seen a couple of the tokens that Gaurav has made for people from last time too, and they're awesome.
Yes.
They're really good.
I have a lot of fun making these.
Gunslinger Andy, I don't know who you are on YouTube if you have an account there, but when you Ah, Sliptide. Perfect. Okay, so do we want to play some of this first, and then...
Yes, we will go to the combat step a little bit, probably like in half an hour, an hour-ish. And then we will play through. Basically, I want to do all the combat stuff in the middle. So if you have any challenges, challenge us now.
Challenge!
If you win, you get your name on the Monument of Victory, which is just a beautiful coffee cup.
Our wonderful Monument of
So
Victory.
every
right
time
now,
we have to eat beans, we have to look at Castles and Chemo's name.
Yep. Castles and Chemo, so far, has been the one to defeat us.
Yep. The only single... I think we've done like 5 matches, and this is the only one we've lost, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Right now we have no beans in the hopper, which I'm perfectly fine with.
We don't have to have
they're
beans.
disgusting.
They're the worst.
But you can put them into the mug for us.
Yeah. So today, instead of doing a draft, which we've done a lot of, we've done drafts and sealed and ranked draft and traditional draft, which is best of 1 or best of 3. We're actually going to try and just play a constructed event, which are actually a lot cheaper to get into and let you play with the decks that you've built through things. And we've kind of gone through and taken the feather deck that we were using and tried to upgrade it to be a little closer to being one of the tier decks, because it actually has made some showings in a couple tournaments already, and we are going to take it into a constructed event and see how we do. Now, we're a little new to piloting this deck, so who knows if it'll go well.
Nah, it's gonna be great. Here we go.
But let's find out.
Choose your deck. Bird's the word.
Bard.
Black is I continue with the reverse Wooburg. Message you the meme. Right, red. Yep, black is next. You're right. He's going in reverse order because I did a green one. I didn't do it on purpose, but it was the one. The one I sent him before was mere like, what is this leaf? But I didn't realize he told me today that that's basically the butterfly meme, but like flipped a little bit. Art-wise, and I was like, oh yeah, it is. I wish I would have done it on purpose, but I did not.
This seems like a very keepable first hand.
Yeah, we can keep this. We got a Gids, we got a turn 2 play.
So the way this deck works, if you haven't seen it before, is it's based around Feather, the Redeemed, who is a card that basically every time you play a spell that targets one of your creatures, it comes back to your hand at the end of turn. It's amazing. Yeah. It's really good.
They're gonna opt or unsummon? What are you doing?
So the plan is that we have a lot of spells that like pump our creatures, draw cards when you target the creatures, and we have creatures that do well when being pumped. Especially, this is kind of one of the core ones of the deck.
Yeah.
This 10th District Legionnaire, which every time we target it with something, it gets a +1/+1 on it, which often means that like we already get some value from it, so it gets like if we use Defiant Strike on it, then it gets +2/+1, and it keeps one of a like permanently.
So now we can either play Gideon or play the Defiant Strike.
I kind of like playing Gideon now.
Really?
Yeah, because we can make it indestructible or give it lifelink, get a little bit of like momentum from that, and then if we draw Feather, we still have a Defiant Strike in our hand.
Sure. I still wanted to get countered. That's what I was. If we play Defiant Strike, we only get 1 spell countered.
What is this song?
I don't know, but it's great.
I like this.
Animus Fox by Glitch Mob.
Animus.
Yeah, Glitch Mob.
Did somebody add this, or is this just part of my songs? Oh, this is good. Oh yeah, another op. Great. Yeah, we're gonna get in with Gids. All right, let's give him plus.
At your service.
This creature gains lifelink, probably.
Sure, because it doesn't seem like they're gonna kill it.
Yeah.
So we're playing against mono blue right now, which means that they're not going to have a lot of direct removal, but they can probably bounce or counter the things we have.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it was good to get this out first. Just because we can put pressure on this way.
Yeah.
Mono blue's a tough deck. Maybe drop our Guild Gate?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to play both, right?
No.
So, that targets a creature. We can Defiant Strike, right?
We could.
Make it indestructible, then Defiant Strike?
Yeah, let's make it indestructible. Move to combat. See if they have any crazy tricks they're going to do or something like that.
Indestructible. And then,
James, I think you can add pretty much anything that's on Spotify.
He just added so many Sabaton last week.
Oh, really?
keep it going. I like that.
Hey. Do what you gotta do, man.
Yeah.
Okay, see, so now he's Merfolk Trickster. Oh, did we?
I made it indestructible, but
I think that was a good move.
yeah, because they're just gonna.
Oh, but it'll lose indestructible.
Yeah, but we're gonna pump it, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, wait. Oh, you should do it before it pumped it.
Why?
Because it's not going to add the +1 counter now.
Why not?
Because it doesn't have the ability.
Yeah, you're right. That's my B.
So now it's going to trade either way. Let's not pump it.
I could pump Gideon, but that doesn't really make any difference. It's alright, that's my goof. That's a punt on me. We got this guy.
Yeah, we can still keep pressure on, which is good.
I feel like I should have played this so that we could have played this next turn for free. Right?
Yeah.
Obsession, fine.
But we only get it once. If we can get that in our hand when it wouldn't have been a bad move. This is going to be tough, because they have their Curious Obsession now. Oh, they have double Curious Obsession. Alright, we might have lost this one.
Well, they're going to have to block, right?
What? Not really.
Go after Gideon?
Do they get Curious Obsession?
I don't think
For
they
all
do.
that they-
Yeah, they have to target us.
Yeah, I mean, generally, if they get 2 Curious Obsessions on something and hit you once, Mono Blue never loses.
Really?
Yeah.
We're like pretty close on life, and we're striking with Gideon and this guy next turn.
I kind of doubt we'll ever get a spell down again, though.
But they have no lands up.
Well, they have enough. They're never going to miss their land drops again.
I feel like you're giving it up a little too easy here.
No, I'm not giving up. I'm just saying that, like, the way this deck works, they're just going to have such massive card advantage. We're never going to get cards down. We can do it this turn, which is great.
Yeah, so give this guy...
So
like...
let's give him...
I say we do this now so we can do it again when he attacks.
Don't we already have one in the...
No,
We don't have anything
we
in the
haven't used
graveyard.
anything graveyard.
Okay,
So
that works for me.
Right? That makes
Uh-huh.
sense, right? Ooh.
Yeah!
Yeah, baby!
Okay, and then we can play him, attack with all of them,
Uh-huh.
re-get it, do it on the 10th District Legionnaire.
Yeah, that's going to be great. Let's give it lifelink, because...
I don't think they can do anything about it right now, so... And they can't really block it effectively.
So I'm going to give it lifelink.
Yeah. Then, we attack with all of them. This thing triggers... Oh! God, I love this deck!
Give it to this. We don't need another one of these.
Not right now. What we really want is a feather.
Yeah. Hey!
Yeah!
Out of the cards, baby!
Just had to ask. Yeah, Subtide, definitely request more songs.
Go for it.
Okay, we might have
Yeah,
this.
they're at 6, man.
They
don't have any-
this
they don't have
deck has a
life gain.
lot it can do.
I'm going to play a Danto.
Yeah, let's drop in a Danto.
Because, like,
Because we don't really get much out of another Dreadhorde Arcanist
yeah,
right now.
we need to do 3 damage. Yeah, I think...
And then, so what we should do is use Adanto Vanguard's ability to give it indestructible, like, what, 7, 8 times? And then die?
I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Why would we do such a thing?
Hey, Historian of Nukes, welcome!
Hi, hello! Yes, you get to draw all the cards. I hope some of those cards are bounced. I don't know what your deck plays.
Oh, and thank you for the donation, Castles and Chemo.
Hey, Castles, hello! Our arch nemesis who has defeated us once!
He's in the chat.
Yeah.
He's Sliptide, right? No, that's
No, that's
Gunslinger Andy.
Gunslinger Andy. Is it Anime Lizard?
No, I think he has his name, right?
Hi, Anime Lizard. I like your name.
Hello, everyone.
I think we win this.
Dom, can you post up the tip link again?
They didn't play anything, so I guess it's all counters.
Yeah. They might have stuff. So I say we just roll with everything.
What do you want to make indestructible?
Probably the 10th District Legionnaire.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, we could have just exiled this! Oh, we should have done that.
What do you mean?
Because he's exiled target non-land permanent.
Oh, you're right. Oh.
But they could have countered... They could have... Well, that would have made more sense. Oh, well. Indes. I don't think we should make it indestructible because they don't have anything to destroy it. It should be lifelink that we should be doing. Blue doesn't have destroy target creature.
Sure.
So there's really no way. They can
All
flash
right.
out a creature to block with, I guess, but
Well, yeah, they have a plan here.
I imagine they have a flash creature.
Yeah, they have a Merfolk Trickster. So they're
What? They must have two. They don't have
So,
two?
do we want to do Gideon and Adanto Vanguard attack?
They do
yeah,
have two.
they had to have two. So I still think we can attack with Adanto.
Oh yeah. But they're gonna double block.
Yeah,
Which
we could make
we
it.
don't give a crap.
Yeah, we could make it indestructible.
And then we get to play Feather and a Dreadhorde Arcanus.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad they tapped out here.
Yeah.
Because I think it might have been a mistake for them to tap out, honestly.
Ooh, only one. Oops, I forgot to. Whoops, that's my bad. Forgot to give it indestructible.
We lost him now.
That's okay. He's gonna be fine. We get it. We get a Feather.
Feather!
This deck is hard. This deck has a lot of choices that I'm just failing to make.
All right, so next time we've got to
What is this song?
bolt the Storm Tamer.
This is yours.
This is mine? Great. Cool. This is my Discover weekly playlist on Spotify, which Spotify just listens to what you listen to and then makes you a playlist every week.
My
And
Discover weekly
This
playlist.
is great. I love this.
My Discover Weekly playlist was like spot on for like the first
Yeah.
3 weeks, and it's just gotten really bad now. And I'm
Really?
not sure why.
Man, we've drawn none of our spells.
We really haven't. So I'm sure they've got something. They want us to block with.
I'm fine blocking one Dreadhorde Arcanus. Like, I don't care, right?
Why don't we double block with Dreadhorde Arcanus?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Worst case scenario, they have some way to, like, I don't. What would this deck have that it could do here?
It could do the hexproof thing to give it...
Dive down?
Yeah, but, like, that doesn't kill any of our dudes.
I don't think so.
Let's find out.
Maybe it's got things we're not used to.
Let's find out. We just need to, if we protect him, then we can kill it. Oh, okay.
All right, that's not what I expected. All right.
Tempest Jin, great.
I don't think that's gonna do it for him.
Oh, but what about 3 Kyrios Obsessions? Oh,
don't-
God's willing.
I don't know
Hell
what
yes.
their plan is now. Okay, well, let's kill the Storm Tamer. And now we're almost invincible?
Yeah, I think we just win.
Because, so, the way Feather works, we can cast this God's Willing every turn.
Ooh,
Darkness be gone.
Like, let's just attack with everybody, and whoever he blocks, we give it...
or we just win the game.
We win!
We did it. Yes.
In Mace, yeah, I don't know what you donated for, but if we reach if you donated for a token, you get a token.
That's 20.
$20 for a token.
Then you do.
got it. And also, if we get to the tier where everybody who donated gets tokens, you get an extra token.
You get an extra one. That's going to be not as nice, but it'll still be good.
We can keep this.
Okay. Do we
Is
go
this, is
first?
this still yours or someone donate this?
This is Sabaton for sure, right?
Yes.
I'm into this.
This feels like a Boros song. We should change.
I think if you just... We definitely could.
Oh, nope. We won't.
We still might.
I mean, they'd have to draw it this turn.
But, so, okay.
They can lava
So
coil
another
now.
key part of this deck is the Reckless Rage is our removal, which is not normally run because it deals 4 damage
Ooh,
to an
aw.
opponent creature and 1 damage to our creature. And 2 damage to our creatures,
So-
which normally kind of sucks.
Here's what I'm thinking. Samet Sprint, and then God's Willing if they do anything.
I like that.
Right?
Yeah, because we still have... I'd love to keep God's Willing in hand until we get Feather on the battlefield. But
Let's see
we
if
do
they
want
got
to
a-
start, like...
Come
hitting
on,
them.
Lightning Strike, baby. Come on. Oh, yeah. You fucking fell for it. Hook,
You
line,
idiot.
and sinker.
Oh no!
What? What?
Samet Sprint's gonna fizzle.
No, Samet Sprint is a red spell. Well, whatever. What can you do?
All right.
What can you do? Seriously. We need this for feather.
Yeah, we do.
So that's fine. Protection from red.
Yep, well,
That stays on top.
this is a little silly. But hey, they wasted a card.
And we still get the counter.
Well, no, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. We got 2 counters.
We did? Oh, awesome.
We still get the counter. It's when we target it. Even if the spell does nothing.
Dope.
Lava coil?
Well, now we want to... Now what I think we need is for them to play some friggin' dudes.
Ooh, light the stage. Yeah, do that.
Maybe they're like just burn.
They might be.
All right, so they've
Yeah,
got...
they are just burned.
Do we want to play Feather, or do we want to hope for another land?
I mean, we don't have God's Willing.
I know. It's a little dangerous to put Feather on the board now.
I mean, it gives them... They have to have lava coil. They have to have 2 lava coils.
You're right, or a bolt and a... Or a shock and a... No, you're right.
We gotta pressure them.
Yeah. Make them respond.
Yeah.
Make them do something.
Have it.
Because I think... Because what we're doing now is we're forcing them basically to waste their chain work. Yeah! Woohoo! Ha-ha!
That's wild against red deck wins, too.
I know, right?
God's Willing, baby.
We don't
got
need another God's Willing.
No, I'm just saying how good that card is.
Oh, yeah.
It was
I
a
thought
very...
you were hoping for a God's Willing.
Oh, no, I was just saying God's Willing is very good. Yeah, God's Willing was a superstar during Theros, too. That's where it comes from.
This is running pretty well so far.
So far, so good. No complaints.
I feel like I have a special place in my heart for this Feather deck because it's also the first thing we tried to make when
That's
we
true.
got our like VIP streamer one on on the War of the Spark pre-release.
Yeah,
Remember?
yeah. This seems like not a keep. We have no creatures other than Gideon, which doesn't really count.
Gideon is nice.
I don't know. I'll leave it up to you.
I would mulligan.
Yeah. For an aggro deck, I think you need creatures. This is it.
This is much better.
We can
Boy,
toss
this
one.
is a really good
We can only
hand.
toss 1 feather, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Beatles songs! Yay! We got a Defiant Strike. Okay, all right.
So someone pointed out on Reddit, and now I can't unnotice it, which is that if you play Arena and you take your opening hand, it puts the lands on the left and cards in increasing order.
Oh, when you mulligan, you mean?
When you mulligan, it flips it and has the most expensive one on the left and your lands on the right.
Interesting. That is
Right?
weird. Yeah, it did. Yeah, it just did do that. It was left on before we mulligan.
Oh yeah, and Mace,
Ooh,
well,
another one! Ooh!
Broken Pack's feather antics were why we decided to make it.
Oh, so spicy. Get it.
This feels awesome. I kind of think
Save the feather?
don't... Yeah, let's play out Feather next turn. Because
Play this turn, right?
Oh, yeah. But, like, next turn, we could Feather Defiant Strike, and then even if they have removal for the Feather, like, we get it back.
Looks like an Esper deck. They probably have Kaya's Wrath. We gotta be
Oof.
wary of that.
This one might be tough. Control can be a really tough matchup.
That's bad.
We can afford that.
I mean, it's kill a creature, but they also have to kill a creature.
Yeah, they'll just lose their Plague Grafter. But we have another 10th district, at least. Okay, so now we have Feather, and we have the Feather Engine.
But do we risk it?
Yes, 100%.
Okay. Because they could board wipe next turn.
Yeah.
And ruin everything.
So let's keep putting pressure on it.
Draw a card, though.
Oh, yeah. And then next turn, even if they board wipe...
We'll take another one of these, right?
Oh, yeah. Next turn, even if they board wipe, we can cast the Defiant Strike. We don't have enough mana. But if they don't kill it next turn, we can start casting it every turn. You know? Like, even on their turn.
Right.
Just to draw a card. Yeah, that's how this deck's supposed to play.
Yeah, they're going to Kaya's Wrath. Oh.
No Ixalan's Binding. Maybe even worse.
Is it worse? We kind of win. They have 8 health.
Yeah, but we can't do 8 damage to them now.
Watch me, baby. Draw card, draw card, draw card. Nope. Draw card, draw card. Come on.
It's awesome that the 10th District Legionnaire lets us scry, and then we get to draw the cards.
Right.
All right, they're down to 1, but you know what? It's like the thing that control decks get to
I know.
1 and then stabilize.
So now they could Kaya's Wrath. Or they
Yes!
could lose. They could just lose.
So
I was very much expecting a board wipe there, but hey, we'll just take the win. That's 3 in a row, baby. We can't be stopped.
before we go,
Yeah. What we got?
let's switch our person to Aurelia.
Oh yeah.
This is important.
Wait, I don't know if we have Aurelia unlocked.
Well, let's find out. Wasn't Aurelia one of the ones, or do you have to buy Aurelia?
I thought she was like a gold one or something.
She might have been.
How do I change it? I thought it wasn't a profile. Oh, here we go. Change
Change
it.
avatar.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
she is.
Where is she?
I bought Ral in my personal one because I play Is It.
Oh, you can be a zombie? Oh, a regular zombie? That's cool.
Our duty comes first.
How much does Aurelia cost? Can you just buy the avatar?
Ha.
Oh, you can't? Oh.
Hotter than parole violations is a great phrase.
3,000? Oof, that's way too much.
Yeah, I think for our little free-to-play account here,
I
we're
like her,
not
but...
gonna do it.
Yeah. All right, 3 wins in, baby. We're doing great.
So remember, if you have any questions about the deck, about what we're playing, anything like that, please let us know. We can see what you're doing. Hey, Steven.
Stephen Poe!
How it do?
What's up? What's
Dweebs
up,
and
nerd?
dorks.
Oh, shit. Nope, this isn't good. We have 2 feathers, but nothing else.
If we had a 2-drop, I'd say this was fine, but
Yeah,
we can't
don't.
count on drawing an extra white source. So let's mull. I gotta say, I really like the London mulligan.
This is also not great. No red source.
Oh, I think we gotta just mulligan
Yeah.
down to 5. All right,
Ah!
I say we keep it either way.
Oh boy, this is not good, but yeah, I guess we have to keep it. So
Maybe
we don't
we
need
should have
this.
gone to 4. Let's get one of the Gideons.
Yeah.
So if we draw a red source, we have somewhere to go with this.
Come on, red source, baby. Heart of the cards. Let's do it.
So how have you felt about the London mulligan?
Oh, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
Feels great. Red source, but it's slow.
That's okay. I mean, it's better than nothing. I mean,
Looks
we
like-
are against mono red,
Yeah,
so it sucks that it's slow.
but next turn we'll have 10 District Legionnaire with God's Willing.
Ooh,
Ooh, and a Defiant Strike.
Can you not hear the music?
The music is going on now.
Let's just attack without casting anything, and see if we can like bait out a shock or something.
Come on. Red deck wins, always has one. They might have 2 shocks, though.
They're thinking about it too, so maybe. Yes.
So, but if they have another shock.
If they have another shock, then they use 2 shocks on a.
Oh, wait, no, then we get a counter and they can't do it. We play God's Willing, he gets a counter, right? Oh, no.
If they have another shock, they're
yeah,
fine.
That's right. Which seems they do, because...
it doesn't matter
they
which one.
don't. We'll take this guy. Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's a good next card.
Protection from red. Still fine. I mean, they can bolt us next turn. This turn, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, there it is.
I mean, yeah, they definitely can. At least now we can get Gideon out, which is pretty difficult for mono red to get rid of.
Do we get this out, though? Because there is stuff in the yard for it. And,
Yeah.
we can protect it.
Yeah, and we can't tick up Gideon until we have another creature on the battlefield.
We can, it just won't do anything. So this is probably better. But they could have a Wizard's Lightning.
Gideon might have been better then.
But also, red is spending all these spells, killing
Oh,
our
yeah.
creatures instead of us.
That's like how to win against mono red a lot of the time.
I don't know
is to,
why I
like-
said we had protection for this. We don't. We have Defiant Strike.
Yeah.
I thought we had God's Willing.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, I don't know why.
Chain Whirler. Fine with that.
Okay. We can make Chain Whirler. Like, I think we can handle a Chain Whirler. Because we've got Gids.
We got Gidsy, baby.
We got Big Giddy B.
What'd it say? So if you mulligan, it takes you too many turns to get a good card out?
You know what? There's a couple things you take into consideration, Michael.
Yesterday.
Oh, I love this song. I friggin' love this song. Generally, you mulligan if you don't have any cards you can play. If you don't have enough mana to be able to play the cards you need, it's an issue. If you have all mana or if you have all lands and you don't really have any like things to play with it, you're gonna want to mulligan. If you have all these lands that aren't the color of the spells you need to play, I think it's obviously Gideon.
Well, but they just deal 5 and kill it.
Yeah, but that's them not hitting us.
It's true.
Together we can banish evil from this plane.
Submit 0.
So mulligan really is just like, this is not a hand that will win me this game. Because especially now, so the London mulligan, the way it works is instead of, it used to be you would draw 1 less card each time. Now you draw the same number of cards, but you have to pick 1, then 2, then 3 of them to put on the bottom of your deck that you don't get
Another
anymore.
day, villain.
This seems like a loss.
Yeah, this one is not working out for us. Mulligan, when you multi 5, you usually lose. We actually put up a fine fight.
Double Spitfire.
Yeah, we're dead. I mean, we're not literally dead yet, but you kind of don't come back from this in mono red.
If we draw a feather, we might be good, because we have Sheltering Light, which means
Sure.
infinite blockers.
Well, 1 infinite blocker.
True, but we drew a land. Scoops.
I think that's it.
Scloops. Any beans in the cup? Check that
Oh, yeah.
Kindle.
Let's
Google
see.
device.
So fine. We've got toast.
Oh, we got toast. Let's do those then.
All right. Our first toast of the day. Our first big gulp of the day, as we call it. From Castles and Chemos. Here's to Chad. Though his time with the Black Blade was short, he still got to ride a demon.
He's talking about Gideon, but they call him Chad.
Oh yeah, everybody calls him Chad.
He's like a bro.
Big gulp. Oh yeah.
Oh,
Thanks for that, Castles and Chemo.
Thank you for that. Wait, is there another one?
No, that's the only
Okay,
toast.
cool. Great.
But we have 2 more tokens people have unlocked. So
Excellent.
Look forward to your tokens, people. Oh, also
Excellent.
Stephen Pope, thank you for the
Oh.
Thank you for the donation.
Stephen. Oh,
thanks,
you.
Stephen.
Oh.
We know him.
I don't know why I'm making this face. I do know him. Maybe
We
that's why
know
I'm doing
him.
it. It's okay to do that to people I know.
Mr.
Mr. Popo!
Bastion fills.
Oh, we didn't pick a...
I think a cassette of the Looney Tunes singing Beatles songs sounds great.
Is that a thing? Is that on Spotify? Someone put that on. I want to hear it. This is a keep.
Yeah, we keep this. So, we've upgraded this deck with the wild cards that we've earned through playing. And we have stayed almost entirely free to play.
Yeah, we have.
We did buy the starter pack because it's just an absurdly good deal.
Yeah. Oh, Bishop of the Wings!
Oh, so this is going to be spirits. Probably.
No, it's angels.
Oh. All right. It might be spirits.
I mean, I guess it could also be spirits, but pretty sure it's
I
angels.
think there's a spirits deck going around now.
So do we play this guy or do we play Adanto? We can't attack regardless.
I would do 10th District, because we have another one.
We need another white source is what we need. Oh, don't play an angel,
Oh
don't
yeah,
play an angel, don't
Jace
play
is
an
an
angel.
enormous dweeb. He actually got way less of a dweeb in Ixalan, though.
Double Bishop. And they're attacking?
Like, in Ixalan, he sort of became a pirate.
Do we block? We don't block this.
I would.
But they have mana up. They get Defiant Strike.
Yeah.
I don't think this deck does. I don't know what this deck is. It's got 2 bishops.
Yeah, I don't think they would Defiant Strike. Defiant Strike's not good unless you have a way to play it.
All right, here's my trick. We play another one of these, and if they block, boom. Surprise.
I like that.
Or I guess we could Defiant Strike. Actually,
Well-
we should probably Defiant Strike. Because that kills it
can't.
also. Oh, no, we can't. You're right.
We don't have enough white.
Take that. Yeah, no blocks.
They're not blocking. I still say we do it. What are they going to do? Unsummon? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 4 damage is exactly the amount of damage we'd like to do. Yes, I know. Yes, I know.
We just get to scry twice. Hilarious. So they're probably going to gain a bunch of life in a bit.
What
Yeah.
is this deck?
It's mono Bishop of Wings.
So
Well, let's
1, 2.
attack with everything, and then we can... Let's not overextend our attack. Let's attack with everything, and then Reckless Rage one of their dudes. I guess we could have done it to the undone one before they blocked, but... I don't know, because we could possibly get a 2-for-1 if they block our 3-3 with the 1-4.
No way they block the 3/3.
No, I think that would
Yeah,
be
they block nothing.
absurd.
So let's do this. Do you want to share the counters around?
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
I think that's a good idea.
So target creature you don't control, this guy.
Sure.
Right, doesn't
They're
matter.
all the same. I mean, it'll make a 1/1 spirit for them.
Sure. Oh, then we can't do it here because this will be a 3/1.
No, they'll be fine.
But
They're
if
not
they block
blocking it.
But they're going to block with the spirit.
They already
Oh,
passed
yeah,
blockers.
they pass blockers. You're right.
Oops, all bishops.
Ooh,
I wouldn't put it to the bottom.
really?
We need a white source.
Yeah, I guess
We
you're
need
right.
to cast Feather.
But like Infinite Legionnaires, also pretty good.
Yeah, they're not bad, but we got 2 of them. I mean, we'd just be setting ourselves up for like really getting wrecked by a.
Should we
I think I say we hold on to
save
it.
the gods willing?
Yeah. Because it's just such a beating if someone like uses removal on you and you 1 mana God's Willing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They've stopped attacking. Should
in Mace,
I... No.
Jace ended up dating Vraska because he lost all his memory and was just cool and shirtless on a desert island. Basically, read the Ixalan stories.
All right,
Because
so
that's how
attack
they
all,
met.
right?
Yeah.
We only have 1 god's willing.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we could kill both of them.
here's the thing: we can only do Defiant Strike or God's Willing.
Well, let's do what? Oh, you're right.
We only have 1 source of white,
Let's Defiant Strike one of them.
but then we can't God's Willing. So if they bounce it, we boned. It's a tough
Well,
decision.
we're bound. If they bounce it, we're boned no matter what, because they could just do it with it on the stack.
Also true. Ooh, hell yeah, we'll take another one. Oh, we need a white source. Damn it. Looks like they have nothing though.
Yeah, I wonder what this deck does.
I'm gonna play this guy,
Might as well.
who has 1 billion targets in the graveyard. I think we just win now. There's an angel.
Yeah,
You
that'll make a
did it.
difference.
You gained 4 life.
So this is gonna be tougher.
Hey,
Boy, we need removal, but we can kind of keep pounding on them with these 10th District Legionnaires.
and this guy. Yeah, this is gonna be a beat for them.
Yeah, let's just attack with all.
We could do Samet Sprint on our this guy. So
We could.
so
I like the
he-
permanent stuff we get from the other guys.
Well, he doesn't die though.
What about Reckless Rage?
Oh yeah.
Kill their angel. I think that's what to do.
Yeah. So target creature you don't control.
Angel.
Angel for sure.
And then our Ford strength, 10th District. Or either of them.
I would do this one.
Yeah, it's fine.
No.
No.
White source, please.
Yeah, so the story starts out that Vraska finds Jace and is all like, I hate you.
Well, they can double block.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking the 4-person.
Wait, they're not going to double block.
They might not be...
I don't know what's happening here.
I don't know what their plan is. I am admittedly a little confused about what their plan is. Although Esper decks often have late. Is this Esper? It's just
blue-white so far.
Just Azorius.
Should I play a Danto Vanguard or save for God's Willing? Because I feel like we don't need God's Willing against blue-white.
I don't think we need to play anymore.
You don't think so?
No, I think we have a really good board right now.
They can't board wipe at 4, though.
Can't they?
No, there's no Day of Judgment. Board wipes for white are 5 or above. Unless they have Settle the Wreckage. Unless they have Settle the
know.
Wreckage, but then we're going to fall to that no matter
Is
what.
that going to be the difference between killing them next turn and killing them 2 turns from now?
Next turn, They'll have one less blocker, and they might gain life.
I mean, sure. I think it's a little risky.
All right, we'll pass.
I like having up God's Willing. It feels pretty safe. Yeah.
Ooh, they shot themselves. Spark double.
Ooh, wow, it really is oops all bishops. Oh, wait, I guess they could copy one of our guys.
No, it's you control.
They've played a lot of bishops. We keep killing them. Oh my god. Oh my god.
We can't God's Willing.
We could God's Willing their bishop.
No, we can't. It's you control.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
That's a shame, because that would be hilarious.
Damn, red sources.
Yeah, Jason Vraska were a pretty good couple in, whatchamacallit, in Ixalan. So, I say we attack with everything. We Defiant Strike something for free. Yeah, because they're going to have to block both of these. I mean, we're going to clear their board right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, yeah, let's Defiant Strike.
Who should we defiantly strike?
The one on the right.
This guy? Or, yeah. We don't need another one.
Nope.
We need a white source. Come on, white source. Ah, damn!
And then do we want to...
Yeah, they're gonna have to do it that way.
All right. I'm a little confused why they didn't do it the other way.
The other way,
Where they would have kept one guy.
They would have died.
No, they wouldn't.
Wouldn't they have taken... Oh, I see.
We
For
don't have
blocks.
trample.
I'm gonna play... No, we don't. Definitely don't need a Dantos Vanguard.
No, not at all.
Now they just scoot. Oh, now they could board wipe.
But basically,
Lyra.
when Jace didn't remember who he was much cooler. That's what happened. I mean, we got him. Just God's Willing on white and roll in.
Oh, we just God's Willing whoever he blocks.
No, we do it before blocks. He can't block if they're protection from white.
He can. It's just no damage.
No, you can't. You can't block someone who has protection from your color.
You can. You just don't do damage.
I bet you can't.
All right, let's find out, I guess.
Wait, it might have
Why don't we just...
description of protection on the card.
Player protection can't be blocked. Oh, I guess not.
Yeah.
So protection from white. All right.
If they're already blocked, they don't do any damage.
Well, I don't know why we're doing this.
But white. Oh my god! For a second, I thought you were gonna press blue, and I was gonna be like, "What are you doing?"
They have blue cards.
Oh hey, Vampire 54, Anime Lizard 1, into it.
Boosh. Oh, hi, Vampire 54. I like your Anime Lizard account. You leveled up from Anime Lizard level 1 to Vampire level 54. Pretty good. Pretty good jump.
You know, Vampire 54, there is a vampire deck that is doing really well.
Oh yeah, Orzhov
Vampires
Vampires is doing really good.
I think it was Matt Nass who made it.
I didn't see.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm just thinking of him because he's the KCI guy. And
Thanks for the tips, Bondo! Hello, Bondo.
So, I'm just going to say some random magic stuff because I've been thinking about it.
Okay, I'll let him do this.
Until
Dom says stop.
I was reading a thing about banned magic decks. And I gotta stop. Dom said stop.
This is the keep.
So, a deck that was recently banned. So Modern has had a lot of bans. Modern is the format that goes back all the way to like 10th edition.
Dang, everybody's playing
something
red.
like that. But
Yes.
oh yeah, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
But one of the funniest things in Modern is they recently banned a deck called Kruk Clan Ironworks, which took forever to combo off. It was a ridiculous deck. I wouldn't have played him.
Well, he can survive.
I know, but we don't want to pay 4 life against mono red.
Yes, we do.
We don't.
Next turn we can stealth this or not stealth this. We can have this up with protection.
But basically, the creator of Kruk Clan Ironworks, which was this deck, was like one of the biggest advocates for banning it. He was like, no, this deck is broken. I know, I made it.
Should we
He's
just-
like, this is too good.
Should we just straight block this for a trade without even making it indestructible?
Sure.
Right? What do you
Yeah.
think?
I guess so.
I mean, you could also just take 4 to keep it around, but...
Yeah, but block it. They might, like, bolt it or something.
Well, that'd be mana.
Oh. Sure. I don't like giving, I don't like taking any life we don't have to against mono red.
So don't make it indestructible, right?
I guess there's a case for it, but I wouldn't.
Because we are also aggro, you know?
Yeah. We're sort of aggro.
Okay, so now I can play Feather, but it feels like I should... Ooh, I can play Guildgate, though.
I kind of would maybe play Gideon.
Really? No, they can easily
Yeah.
kill Gideon next turn.
How? Oh,
So-
yeah, if they, like, bolted and stuff.
If they play 1 bolt on Gideon, this will become a 2-2, this will become a 2-2. And that's an easy kill to Gideon.
So we could play Plains. We could play 10th District and then have Sheltering Light in case they do anything about it.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Do we attack with it? Or do we save it for a blocker for these 2 goons? I kind of like blocking.
Yeah, let's save it as blocker. So against this deck, we'll win the long game. I think.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I think it was in Mace.
Okay, here we go. Sheltering Light. Target
And if
creature.
they've got another shock, I guess fine.
Ooh, yeah.
Although I don't think another shock does it.
Not anymore. Yes, we do want the points.
Do we?
Yeah, because then we can play Feather and hold up Defiant Strike.
Alright.
No attacks.
They've got quite a board. But yeah, let's do Feather. Oh no, let's just Feather, Defiant Strike, roll in.
Feather. That doesn't make him indestructible, though.
No.
He'll be a...
But they've like they might have to block. And we'll get the Defiant Strike back.
Oh wait, let's just attack first. Let's make him block.
Feather's not easy for this deck for mono red to handle.
I Defiant Strike anyways, right?
Yeah. Because we get it back.
Ooh, we can give that to Gideon.
I kind of like that. I think that's a good get.
Sprint Gideon?
Sprint Gids. Sprintian.
My name is Sprintian.
Yeah, Channel
I-
Fireball has a lot of really great articles about stuff like that.
Herbs!
But no, I also I remember back when
Ooh, Warhammer.
KCI, Cart Clan Ironworks, was in Modern.
We don't block this, right?
No, it's a trap. It's a trap! I remember Matt Nass writing up things like, yeah, this deck should probably be banned.
They better have a creature. They might just lose next turn.
I mean, they put a lot on us. Like, you know, we're within double bolt range.
We're going to lifelink next turn.
We are.
Haste lifelink.
We're gonna big ol' haste. Well, we're gonna give Gideon haste and 10th District Legionnaire lifelink, right?
No, we should... Oh, yeah.
We can't give Gideon. That's not how that works. But lifelink is
Ooh, yeah, back up
huge
Feather.
against them.
Yeah, lifelink is back-breaking.
Yeah. So let's give
I'm
10th
marching
District
to battle
Legionnaire.
as your champion of
Let's give
justice.
10th District Legionnaire lifelink, and then let's Defiant Strike it,
I will
just so we can
lend you
keep
my
the
strength.
drawing cards.
Oh, you don't want to haste Gideon?
How much is that going to hit for?
So
we
we'll
just
do
win, then?
6,
4,
10, we'll
5,
do
6,
13.
7,
They'll be
8,
at
9,
2.
10, 11.
No, but we're at 5.
Let's Samet Sprint. We could. I think we kill them next turn pretty much no matter what.
And we have no blockers, though. That's the problem.
Oh, we die, yeah.
I mean, we're going to gain... I guess, yeah, let's Defiant Strike this. And just
Or
attack.
we could Samet Sprint it.
Oh, we get it back no matter what. Right.
Yeah.
This just draws us a card. That's all I was saying.
Right. That would gain us 4, 5, 6, 7 life,
Yeah.
which is pretty brutal. Bottom.
Yeah, we don't need another land.
What are the terms of a challenge? Basically just pick a deck, and we pick a deck, and then we play against each other. That's kind of it.
I kept feather back for blocks, just in case.
Yeah.
Because I think we win no matter what. Next turn we have this with haste.
Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If they have double bolt in hand, if they have double lightning strike in hand, they win.
But we're gonna
no,
block.
because we have a block.
Yeah. And this thing is going to have haste next turn, which means we cast another spell from our graveyard.
Okay. Experimental Frenzy.
Game
I
over.
think we got it.
Yeah.
I don't think they can win now.
Yeah, that's a big old game over. So let's give Feather lifelink, or I guess let's give this guy lifelink.
Sure.
I believe in you.
Let's give this thing haste. No, don't really
We
need
need a
that.
Phoenix. Let's attack with everything and then Defiant Strike anything they... Well,
And we also get to cast something for free.
get a free Sheltering Light on 10th District, probably.
Sure. I feel a scoop coming on. We don't need another.
See,
Feather.
I like Sheltering Light, but God's Willing's better because then they would not be able to block. Like, we could just... It's red and he would just get through, you know?
That's true.
Protection is just great. Oh, I love this song. It's good. Wait, this might not be the song I think it is. What is this?
Good night.
Yeah, it is. For a minute, I thought it was different.
Is this your song, Dylan?
Yeah, in Mace, we only have green Tehran and feathers.
Oh, 'cause you just said that.
Them, but the Beatles, they just picked 15 Beatles songs.
Oh, wow, really?
Nice.
That's awesome.
All right. If this is how they're blocking, we win.
No, we left at 1.
We Defiant Strike Feather.
Oh, right. Also, Arcanus has trample, so we win anyways.
Yeah.
Taking an awful
Are
long
they
time.
realizing that if they block like this, they lose? They really don't want to give up their Runaway Steamkin. And they should. Because otherwise, they just lose.
They just lose no matter what. There's no...
I mean, this is them deciding to lose.
I don't do anything. They just lose.
Sure, let's still
taking-
Defiant Strike. 'Cause
Really?
It's funny. And then we get them to -1.
Success!
Tight.
This deck's real smooth, buddy. Nice work. So if you're challenging us, this is what we're gonna steamroll you with.
Probably.
By the way, because it works real well when it does work. Well. Almost a 7 wins.
Also, Bondo, thank you for the donation. Thank you for the
Bondo.
tip.
That was like hours ago.
It might have happened a long time ago. I'm not always. So we have the.
You know, you do this on wildcards too.
I know.
I know, but like, it's just funny that you're doing it on like this show as well.
Because I don't notice it, and I'm just like, I would rather accidentally
Yeah.
thank someone twice.
I'm totally
Then
fine with
not do it.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the better way to go too. Oh yeah, this is fine. This is a great hand.
This is the curve we want.
This is the god hand.
Yeah, this is almost the nut draw. The nut draw is the best draw of your deck.
It's the draw when you draw some cards and you're like, oh, I'm gonna nut.
It's exactly that.
Oh, my nuts. Oh, they're trying to scream that they love these cards.
Stop!
What? We gonna break Twitch terms of service?
We're not on
No.
Twitch. We're on the tubes, and we know they have no morals.
They have no standards.
The things I've seen on YouTube, you wouldn't believe.
So I think we should Cliff Top next turn. Oh, that comes into play untapped. Sweet. I think we should Boros Gate actually. And then next turn play Feather and have Protection up.
Should I play Sam at Sprint?
We could, yeah. Do it. All attack. That's a ton of damage. So Salmon Sprint is not like part of the tier. version of this deck. Put it
Another
in the bottom.
feather?
We don't need another feather.
I mean, they could kill that. They could Thoughtseize it or whatever next turn.
Sure, but I don't know. It's just going to be a dead card
We're playing
in our hand.
blue
if they
black.
don't.
It's
Okay,
not a dead
sure,
card.
You can keep it if you want.
It's a backup feather.
but I
doesn't-
think we want to get cards we can start casting at them.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. But this is the...
Because this deck is good against us because it can
Wait,
counter our spells.
Oh, this is Jund. No, not Jund.
No, it's
Grixis.
Grixis control, probably. Wait, Clifftop.
All right.
So now we play Feather. Attack with everybody.
Got feather down. You done. Do we God's Willing for funsies?
No, because they might have removal, and we might want to use it to get rid of that. If it was Defiant Strike, I might have, but
They're gonna play.
yeah, see?
Oh man.
Ah!
Man, did you fuck up today? Black, please. Yeah, we'll take. Well,
Yeah.
actually, they might not have many
let's bottom
creatures,
that.
right?
I doubt they have any creatures.
Yeah.
I mean, they might. I think this deck plays a lot of Planeswalkers and has Sarkhan, who does make dragons. So now I think I was going to say we God's Willing.
Really?
Yeah,
Don't we
'cause
save
get it back.
protection? For this turn though, they have another thingamabobber.
Yeah, but we would have gotten it back.
Ah, look at this. Nikki B.
Yeah.
Discard a planes.
Nicola Bolas.
Oh no, my Planze.
Why didn't we discard Feather?
Why would we want a planes?
Because we can't play Feather.
We can play it when this feather dies, if it dies. Why are you so against 2 feathers?
Because we can't play it!
We have 5 lands. When will we ever need a 6th land?
I guess that's a good point. Our curve does max out at like 2.
Now I'm gonna God's Willing. Give this a counter,
Yep.
and then protection from it doesn't matter.
Let's
Sure,
take a
we'll
Gideon.
Yeah, we'll take a Gideon. I don't think it matters. Yeah, we'll still take the Gideon. And now we can just God's Willing protection from blue and win the game
Yeah.
because they can't block.
Yes, I think that is the case. We win. They're tapped out. God's willing.
Good scrub.
Man, we're rolling through this.
Yeah.
They see it. They see
Yeah.
what's happening.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good deck. That's pretty good. Nicole Bolas. Yeah, that's right, Nicole.
Oh, hey, sorry, sorry, Shannon McCormick.
Oh, sorry.
We switched here as a light protest of Amazon.
Yes.
Because there's a big protest going on, and we were like, let's get in on that. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Sorry. We try to get out some tweets and messages, but you know, sometimes you miss some people, and I'm sorry about that.
We apologize. All right.
Okay.
So,
After this match, let's start doing our battles.
yeah, we almost made it.
This is the last one, I believe.
We only lost one.
We win this one, we've gone all the way.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So now we should build a sideboard because then we could do traditional constructed.
That's true. We are almost out of wild cards now.
We are pretty much out of the good ones.
But this has been good. I think this also shows this didn't take us that much.
Nope.
To build to this, and we built it into kind of a half-working deck.
Yeah.
Just by taking stuff we had picked up and making like 1 or 2 of each of the important rares throughout it, and it's been playing really well for us before that. And now that we've been able to make it a little closer to being the tier deck,
I keeps.
I think it's a keep. It's not great, but
You know what I just noticed about this board?
what?
Is that the shadow of Asperia is watching you. Like the stone statue of
Oh my God.
Asperia is watching you.
That's totally
Because this is
what
the
it is.
Golgari zone. That's the shadow of Asperia.
Ah.
I didn't notice until I put on my sunglasses because it's easier to see the dark parts.
Asperia got turned into a rock.
Yes, Asperia was the old guild master of
The
the
Azorius?
Azores. Yeah. And at a summit, at a guild summit, Vraska turned and killed Asperia. Just straight up stone glared.
It was legit a pretty dick move. We wanted
deck-
one of those.
What deck is this? Esper
I bet this is Esper Hero.
Esper Hero plays this in the main?
I don't know.
No
Maybe
way.
not.
No way.
Well, Honor Guard's really good.
Yeah, it's good.
In fact, it might be really good against us.
No, we have no enter the battlefield. We were going to play this card.
Oh, right. You
We
know
have-
what? I was thinking this had, like, prevent combat damage to it, too.
You play a
But no,
Danto,
it's just...
right? Yeah.
Yeah! A Danto! We are almost out of wild cards because we spent them all on making the feather deck better.
Sahili?
Huh.
My creations are things of
So I don't know what this deck is. What are you running, Kneel Before James? Great name. Stranger on the internet. We're playing
Kneel
against.
before James.
Kneel Before James.
Okay, so we can Reckless.
We could Reckless and make Adanto Vanguard indestructible.
Do we need to?
Well, how about we roll in with Adanto Vanguard?
And attack Sahili, or like... We do attack Sahili. They probably have some combo that goes with this, right?
Yeah. I wonder if we just want to take their life total down. All right, let's do it. We can Samet Sprint if they block.
We don't need to Samet Sprint. It's our 3-1. They're not going to block. Oh, to kill it, you're saying.
Yeah. And trade. I mean, not trade.
Yeah.
Although, you know, if this is a control deck, we probably don't care about our life total, so I don't think it would matter to... And if they don't block... Oh, they didn't block. Let's kill it.
With Samet Sprint?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yay!
We got to settle.
We do have a settle.
That card probably needs to go, actually.
Yeah, settle's kind of a
innovation knows
an artifact
no
of
bounds.
our
I will return.
improper deck.
Yeah.
That being said, actually in Best of One,
We did
I
play,
really
like-
don't mind having settle in the deck.
We did play like 3 red decks.
There have, yeah, and there have definitely been times where
Board
I've
wipe?
been playing against red decks.
Oh. We're going to attack them board wipe.
I've been playing against red decks with the earlier version of this deck, and it's been like, oh, they've got 5 people, they're going to roll in and kill me. Or against white weenies, it's actually a really good deck there. Where are we taking it?
No, yeah, I'm just taking it. Cause
Yeah,
I even have a board wipe.
they probably do. Which, if it doesn't destroy, we could save Adantos. Yellow submarine.
Take 8, save our
Yellow
dudes.
submarine. We are living. Oh yeah, I love Verhoeven.
Okay, guess I didn't have a board wipe.
Maybe they're hoping we will continue to overextend. Let's drop the 10th district though.
Maybe they hope we'll overextend.
Yeah, but I think we kind of got to do it.
You must have a counterspell, I guess.
I mean, is
Or-
Kaya's Wrath exiled?
No, it doesn't.
Then our Adanto Vanguards will survive. So let's attack with all.
Is there a flash creature they're gonna play?
Could be.
What is this? What do you have? What?
All right. That seems not. It seems pretty good.
Seems fine.
Because they could block both our Adanto Vanguards. Maybe we're wrong about this deck, and it is gonna be aggro-y?
What do we do here? Do we take 8?
What do you mean? Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. Sorry.
We should probably define strike this, draw a card, do some damage.
Sure. Yes.
Let's do that first.
Well, don't do damage first.
No, I just mean we're gonna draw the card first, and then we can decide about. Don't really need land. Oh, I guess we could settle, but
Well, what are we settling against? Just
Yeah.
their honor guard?
I'd rather not, right?
Yeah, put it on the bottom. We need better things.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
So now what? Do we save one of them, maybe? I don't know.
let's just save them.
Save them both?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, maybe that's a friggin' trick, but... Maybe that was a bad move, but...
You
it
immediately
feels-
second-guess this decision.
Well, I second-guess every decision I make.
Jordan!
But I think there's a pretty good chance this is a control deck, wherein our... like, losing a little bit of life total at the beginning is not nearly as big of a loss as it is against an aggro deck,
Yeah,
you know?
sure. I kind of want to get Straight Hurricanist going.
A yellow submerging vessel.
All right, they're in the tank. They're thinking. Did you ever see the Beatles show in Vegas?
I didn't.
It's pretty good. You should go see
Is
it.
it?
And I'm not. I went to go see it as a fan of someone who's not a Beatles fan. Like I like
right.
the Beatles, but I'm not like a huge Beatles fan.
So, okay, they are going to start making some tokens and rocking us, I think.
I guess not this turn.
No. So let's just do a ton of damage, right? Let's play this white.
You
And
can always settle the tokens.
let's Reckless Rage kill their Honor Guard and roll in, right?
Then we can't play Feather. But
Yeah, but we
gotta
don't have
get the
anything we
damage.
can play.
We gotta get the
We
damage.
can't get any feather value right now.
Kind of need another red source to play this.
We don't.
No, we don't. We don't.
Really.
We don't. We don't.
So we maybe should have, because we could play Dead Heart Arcanist and Feather if we had gotten that. Well, and part of the trick of this deck is that when Dreadhorde Arcanist pulls things out of the graveyard, normally it says, after you cast it, exile it.
Right.
But Feather overrides that, and it'll come back into our hand.
Silent Submersible is you. Oh, we just went.
We did it!
Cool. Cool.
7 wins for the Mana Dorks.
That was an interesting deck. I don't really know what it did, but
Yeah, me neither.
I guess our deck just ran over it.
Woo!
Hey, we got a pack. And we get to claim another prize.
Wait, how much did we get? We got 1,000 gold!
Pretty
We
good.
doubled our gold.
And we got 2 rares.
We got 2 rares and an uncommon.
Hot damn.
That felt awesome.
That's great, yeah.
Let's open our pack.
Let's open our pack. Let's
See what we
do
got.
it.
And we're pretty close to getting another wild card.
Ooh, temple.
Ooh.
I'll take a temple. I'll take a rare land all day.
I was seeing something that was talking about how, like, when you're a kid and you get toys at Christmas, you get excited. But then you get clothes at Christmas and you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
And then you become an adult and someone gives you, like, nice clothes and you're like, oh, awesome.
Great!
And in Magic, getting lands is like the
Sure.
adult present.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, lands.
Yeah.
This will give me such a smoother mana
Yeah.
base and really help my curve.
That's
go
very
up."
true. It's a good analogy.
But when you start, you're like, lands. What?
All right, who's our first challenger?
All right. Gunslinger Andy.
What's her name?
Sliptide 213. All right, Gunslinger Andy, you still there? You ready to do this thing? Huh? Punk?
You think you could take on the dorks and survive?
Where you at, Sliptide?
You've seen our deck. Now
Slipping
show
that
us
tide?
yours. I guess they respond.
I don't know if he's here. Did he leave?
No, they're here. They're here.
Oh, no.
Have some faith.
Oh, no. Oh, why?
Have faith! And if anybody else wants to challenge us, you can also do so.
Oh, yeah. Dom, maybe send the... So, because we are on YouTube today, you can't do, tips. You can't do,
Yes, you can.
I know, but you can't do exclamation point tips, is what I meant to say. I could not come up with the word. But
Oh, yeah,
there
watch
are
this.
still tips available and things you can get. It does work, exclamation point tips?
No.
Oh, then why are you writing them? Why are you writing them?
He is.
Oh. You're weird.
I'm weird. I did not realize what was happening. Dom just typed in exclamation point Garav rules.
I'm always
I'm like
salty.
talking and things are going I'm like, what?
But we still have things you can tip and donate for.
Yeah.
Just ask for the link and Dom will give it.
Do not cheer him on.
If you have joined in late, we are doing something today too, where everyone who has tipped $2 for every $2 you tipped, you have 1 entry into the raffle to get a free Ravnica bundle.
Our handle-
Guilds of Ravnica bundle.
Our handle is on screen. Manadorix hashtag 44007.
4400.
We're still in full screen. We're not in full screen mode. Okay, great. They can still see the handle, right?
So,
We're not covering the handle with our heads, are we?
You were. Now you are.
Here it is.
Done. Jordan was fine.
am I fine now? Is this okay?
Keep talking.
How about?
Get out here.
Yeah. So if you donate $20, that's 10 raffle entries for this. But if you donate $2, you get one either way, and you can set up a song. So you still get whatever else it is you tip for, but we're also going to send this
Also,
to somebody.
It's Aurelia. It's Bay.
Yeah,
That's not
Aurelia.
bad.
We love Aurelia.
Maybe we should put one of her in our deck instead of Settle, probably.
She's a good sideboard for this.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
She's in a lot of the sideboard. She's too expensive to fit well in this deck.
Well,
I
instead of
honestly
Settle,
think, since we're playing best of one with this, I think Settle's a better choice. Because
Okay.
there will just be times where Settle will win you the game.
because that's for aggro decks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If someone out aggroes us or goes wide, Settle will rock them.
Yes.
Oh, and also if you are entering, I know we've said this all earlier, but in case new people have shown up, if you are entering our raffle, it is United States only for shipping purposes. It's
USA.
just too expensive
USA only.
to ship outside of the U.S.
USA only.
Only USA.
Dom, how far are we from the token of appreciation? $33.
Hey!
Oh man, I got a lot of tokens to make. It looks like.
Nice. Graf's gonna be overloaded. I could make a couple, but they wouldn't be as good
Please
as yours.
do. Just try it.
Mine are real bad.
You don't know that.
You don't know what it's like when
Well,
I
you
draw
can
things.
make the ones that aren't the $20 ones,
It's good.
because the ones that I'm making for the $10 ones are slightly less involved,
Sure.
and they can be whatever you want.
I'm just gonna do all merfolk tokens, and they'll just be people who are seen from the waist up.
Good luck,
And they're
Sultan.
like, I have a tail, but it's off.
I mean, I'm
the
just
picture.
doing. I did that. I did like the zombie face or whatever.
Yeah, but like they're going to just be people.
Just like grocery clerk.
Oh yeah.
He's a 1/1.
All right, gunslinger
1/1
Andy.
soldier grocery clerk.
Bring it on. We should have switched decks.
I guess this is a keep. It's too much red. We can't play Gideon,
I still think we keep it.
do we?
Yeah,
Go
because
first.
if we draw one, I mean, Rekindling Phoenix, despite being something we'll eventually take out of the deck,
That's true.
is real good. I mean, you've played against Rekindling Phoenix.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Requires two spells to kill or an exile. Yo, Jordan, make me a
Merbear token.
Merbear.
Okay, but it's gonna be fish up and bear down.
That doesn't seem right.
Yep.
Hello.
Wait, mute him.
No.
I'm just kidding.
Ooh, double.
All right,
Adonto.
well, we got a lot of Adonto Vanguards at least.
They're playing Groll, it looks like, or Elementals.
Gruul! Not Gruul? Then die.
What we begin, the end race will finish. Then we will dance in Ravnica's rubble. Ooh, they are playing Elementals.
Oh boy. Well, it might just be that that's a really solid dork too.
It's true. If I see blue, it's going to be Elementals, though. Dang, another red land.
We are Red Flood.
So,
So I say we roll in and attack. I mean, if they want to trade a mana dork for 4 life, that's fine with me. Drop the other Danto Vanguard, and then next turn we've got the Rekindling Phoenix coming out, right?
either Phoenix or Gideon if we draw a white.
Whoo! Bring it on, Randy!
So another green. This looks pretty Groll to me. What does that say?
By the
did you
by,
send out
did
tokens
you guys
last-
send out the tokens from last week?
No, not yet.
He's still working
I'm still
on
working on them. I have to do like 7 or 8 of them.
They're looking good. You,
I've done
you have
3.
them here, right?
I do have some of them here, yeah.
We can show some of them off in a
I
moment.
can. Yeah, this is fine.
All right, he's got another Paradise Druid. All right, he's ramping up.
Could Nissa next turn.
Gruul can explode. Boy, it would have been great to draw white mana there. All right, so I say we roll in with both our Adonto Vanguards. We just got to keep pressure on. Put the right amount of pressure on them.
They have one they could,
I don't think there's much they could do.
block.
Yeah. That's a fine trade for me. 4 life for one of their mana dorks.
Sounds good to me. Ugh. Uh-oh, they have something.
What they got?
Shock?
What you got?
They shock it, and then we do it again.
What you got, Gunslinger?
Which we'll do.
Yeah, we definitely will. No, we'd only have to do the other one if they shock it.
Well, I thought they were going to shock this one.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Phoenix?
Let's do it. Hard to get rid of.
Good luck. Bird's the word, baby.
Let me go.
Bird's the word, baby.
What you got, Randy?
I
mean,
specifically
Andy.
don't want to see mine. Ooh, Domri.
Ooh, Domri.
This actually is fine.
I think we can handle him now because we have our in the air guy.
So they're gonna play another creature that can't be countered.
Ooh, lava coil.
Yep,
that does it.
That does get rid of it.
Wish we had our God's willing up.
I mean,
But we
did
don't
all we
have enough
could.
white. Alright, so we get to kill Domri.
we Gideon, right?
Let's Gid. Gideon.
I will
Lifelink.
defend the weak at every opportunity.
Let's pick this guy. Let's give him
Your
lifelink.
light will
Roll
bleed
both at
darkness.
Domri. It's a little extra,
Yeah, we could
but
do
I'd rather
6 to
get
the
him off the board.
face.
I like controlling the board right now because we have a pretty strong...
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine. I think it's fine. Let's say play a haste creature. I mean, they could do 2 to... If they play a riot creature, they could... Oh, it's another one of these. Okay. Well,
Ah, Paradise Druid versus Chad.
yeah.
Big old Chad Gideon.
All right, well, that doesn't do anything.
Now, I think we just roll in, right?
Should I just give one indestructible, or...
We could give him protection from green. I say we don't give him indestructible. I don't say we don't do anything until they block. Make them block.
Well, we have to do Gideon, I'm saying.
Oh, yes. Sure.
Just do lifelink again?
No, let's give it indestructible. Save us 4 life.
But we're going to gain 3 life. Might as well... And then we can just pay the 4 to make
Oh.
it indestructible, right? So...
That's a really
Right?
solid point.
Who cares?
That actually is, like, probably the reason that
Right?
combo is in the deck.
Yeah. Because, like, it negates
Prepare for
the
battle.
difference there.
Yeah, Mirror awesome, by the way.
Mirror... Oh, yeah. Mirror's so
Mirror's
cool.
so cool.
I was
They're
talking to-
from Mirrodin, right?
Mirrodin, yeah. I was talking to James about how, like, I'm sure we're going to go back to Mirrodin someday.
Oh, I hope
And,
so.
like, there's going to be a whole bunch of new mirrors there.
Well, wait. We can't go back.
I mean,
Mirrodin.
I guarantee there'll be some way to... Not to Mirrodin, but, like, the things from Mirrodin will return.
Guys, in case
Mirrodin-
you don't know,
Spoilers.
Mirrodin is gone.
Do we Defiant Strike?
Mirrodin died.
They didn't block. Do we Defiant Strike?
No.
To draw a card?
I say we hold on to it because we don't need it right now. I don't think it makes a difference because they're still like on a 1-turn clock basically.
Okie
And what if we
donkey.
draw Feather? Then we can't do both.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't do both.
So Mirrodin is a plane that Karn made. He was just like, I'm powerful. I'm gonna make a plane, and he made an artificial plane where he like was able, you know, it was all artificial beings, and it was like beautiful and wonderful. And I think there was a bunch of cats and stuff that lived there too. And then Phyrexian oil got there, and it slowly spread and like destroyed the entire world.
We just let this happen, right?
Yes.
We could Reckless Rage now, but, like, who cares?
Yeah, because it doesn't even kill Gideon.
Unless they have a thing.
They might have a thing.
But then we do our thing. There it is. So now we can.
Yeah, now we do it.
Okay, Reckless Rage.
That-
Deals 4 damage to this dude. 2 to this guy. And
And
then
then
let me
make him
this
indestructible.
Oh, wait, they might have another.
Oh my god.
Oh!
Ah!
God's will it? No.
Wait, this is still gonna kill it.
Yeah, it is. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Cool.
Still make him indestructible.
I will. Oh no!
Why did you?
I missed the trigger. I'm sorry.
You said resolve.
We still win the game. It's fine.
Ah.
It's not like we're gonna lose.
Hey,
We
good
still
game,
win the game,
Gunslinger
it's
Andy.
okay. GG, Gunslinge Randy.
Mirrodin was an artificial plane,
Big oil ruins
and
everything.
they turned it into a new. It's now New Phyrexia, which is actually one of the coolest, craziest planes
Most
that exist.
depressing.
Phyrexians used to be only black mana, and they're these like horrible Borgy type creatures who are.
They look so cool. Look them up.
Yeah, they're nuts. They're so cool. But on New Phyrexia, or in Mirrodin, because it was a like new place, the Phyrexians had all 5 colors, and there were 5 different factions of Phyrexians, which all fought against each other to take over Mirrodin.
Yeah.
And actually, I think people got to like vote whether Mirrodin one
Really?
or the Phyrexians
I didn't
one,
know
and they
that.
chose the Phyrexians.
That's a cool choice, though.
Yeah.
I did like the Phyrexians more.
So now, like, there's a Mirrodin resistance that lives underground on New Phyrexia, but
Sorry, Randy. I'm sorry you had a horrible hand that you had to keep. But good night. Thank you so much for playing us.
next time,
Next time,
Gunslinger Andy,
you
next
shall
time.
return and lose again.
Oh, that Colossus almost got us.
Yeah, I know.
But it didn't.
Yeah. What should we do now? Do you want to do a draft? Do you want to just continue ranking? I kind of like doing ranked.
Ranked is fun. Okay, what do you guys want to see? Do you want to see us play a draft? We could do a War of the Spark draft. We haven't done that, really, in a while.
Yes.
We could do War of the Spark draft. We could do 2020 Sealed, which is kind of fun.
Seal is okay.
Sealed is okay. I've enjoyed, of course, that 2020 Sealed. We could do a traditional draft, which is best of 3, which is also pretty fun. We'll probably have to try and kind of go fast through the draft.
That's what I was saying. I don't think we'll have time to do only 1 or 2 draft games.
You guys feeling anything particular?
There was no vote. It was a marketing ploy. They got you.
Was it a marketing ploy?
Got you.
We got tricked.
I mean, I didn't even know about it.
Oh, I played a ton in that block.
Oh,
so,
you did?
Yeah.
I played a little bit, but I didn't know anything about the mass story of Magic.
Although-
but I was like, Word Coil Engine's really cool.
Anytime I played previous to Amonkhet, which I played on and off throughout the years, but since I was like in elementary school, what?
How's our Avatar Aurelia?
I don't know. Did you buy it somehow?
No, I did not. It costs more than we have.
Dope. Why did that happen?
I saw you choose it.
But
I did
it's
think you
locked,
chose
though.
it.
It's not available.
Oh, maybe it just worked.
Maybe, but we were. All right. I don't think it worked. Maybe it's just a bug.
Maybe it's because we hadn't chosen something else, and it like was like, well, you clicked it, and that's the last one
I
you
go
clicked.
back. I'm still Aurelia. All right.
Dope. Let's not mess with it.
I'm not gonna, but I don't think it works.
Yeah. Let's do War of the Spark draft,
Okay,
right?
Cool. Cost us some gold, but we got.
So I don't
plenty
know
of gold.
War of the Spark draft all that well, actually.
I know it great.
Bolas' Citadel is great.
I disagree.
I completely disagree. It's
Wait,
amazing.
you just disagreed with me.
Yeah. Bolas.
It's not good.
No, I 100% disagree. I mean, you're at the controls, but Bolas' Citadel is a huge bomb. Like, it's a really, really good pick.
Is it?
You want to see what LSV says?
Do. I mean, Hasmina's very good.
Kasmina's okay.
Harold Red Horde is good.
Is she the one
This
who makes...
guy's actually very good.
Yeah, he's fine.
This guy's ridiculous for some
wait,
reason.
is Kasmina the one that makes...
Makes wizards, yeah.
Oh, Kasmina's great.
Yes.
Kasmina is my pick if we don't do Bolas' Citadel.
I would very much likely do Kasmina. This feels more like a build-around card, but I don't know.
No, it's amazing.
Well, tell me what LSV says, because I don't know. Play The Cheese Stands Alone.
Bolas' Citadel.
The Cheese Stands
Bolas'
Alone.
Citadel is one of the sweetest cards in the set. I'm not convinced there isn't a 6 standard deck with it where you use various life gain stuff. The Infect here is incredibly powerful. Even if it takes work to harness it, Bolas' Citadel has a ton of potential.
That's a constructed review, though.
It gives it... Oh, it is.
You're under constructed. You want to go
You're right,
limited.
that was the wrong one.
Yeah. So I was like, yeah, that is good for constructed.
I'm
That's not
pretty
what
sure
I'm
he
saying.
also rated it super high in this.
I can't imagine this is good for... Paying life for cards is good, but you have to get 6 mana. I don't know, I guess it could be good.
Alright, so he's got it rated as 1 or 3.5 if you build around it.
Yeah, we'd have to build around it. Which I don't...
I
what,
think we could.
What is the build around it?
Well, you know, I like Kasmina enough that it might be worth it just to take her.
But our account needs rares. Let's do it. Let's
It
build around
does.
this.
Well, what you need to make Bolas' Citadel work is
Life
a
gain?
lot of ramp.
Oh, not life gain?
No. It's... Okay, I'll read what he says. In a normal deck, you shouldn't play this. It costs a ton of mana and requires you to have a lot of life to take advantage of it. In a deck with good ramp, defense, and life gain, it can be quite the engine, and it's obscenely powerful if you have enough life points. This is going to need more testing, but I'm going to start with it in the powerful build-around camp, where it delivers if you do the work.
I mean, pack 1 is the only way you build around it, right? So-
or if you already have some good stuff and you
So
get it.
let's take it?
Well, do we want to check what it says about Kasmina? Because she's really, really good.
Go for it. I'm pretty sure she's like 3 or 4 or something. She's very good.
Blue.
But Our account does need more rares. What do you guys think? Should we take Bolus's Citadel or one spunky Planeswalker who has no story behind her?
Casmina's a 3.5,
It's pretty good.
which is what it says Bolus is if you build around it properly.
I'm going to go with this. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm brilliant, so...
Casmina's really good.
Ooh, a Dread Arcanist.
She protects herself. Oh, we just made that.
Oh,
Although if we
Bolus.
picked the Dreadhorde Arcanist, we would get gems.
That's
We
true,
have
but
4 already.
I'd rather not, though. It's not good in our colors right now.
Augur of Bolus is not good in limited.
What about Eternal Taskmaster? It's pretty good.
Whenever it attacks, you may pay... That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we got. Samet is not an early pick. Spark Harvest is the best here.
Oh, yeah, sure. That's removal.
Spark Harvest is
Vraska
really
Finisher's
solid,
pretty good, too.
but it's not as good as Spark Harvest.
No, it's not.
So of the things here, I'd say Spark Harvest is really great. Bloomhulk is really great. Eternal Taskmaster is pretty damn good. But I just feel like if we get a Spark Harvest early, I'm just like, great, I feel good about black.
Well, but I like this guy, so I'm going to take that guy.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
I want to take the uncommon over the common.
All right.
That's
but
that's what I'm taking.
Spark Harvest is the
And it
better
makes
card.
a disgusting noise. Here's Vraska's Finisher is the only card I see that I like here.
There. Yeah.
Blue-black is a pretty strong archetype in this.
Blue-black is very strong.
So I'm going to draft pretty quickly since we don't have much time. Ooh, this guy's very good.
Spark Reaper?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty good. I like
Contentious
Erratic Visionary a
Plan is
lot.
also pretty good. This guy's also good.
I mean, Spark Reaper is better if you already have a bunch of like small creatures you can get rid of.
Well, like this makes creatures. This creature.
Sure.
I think
I would pick Erratic Visionary. Just
Draw a
because
card,
he's
discard a card.
solid, like, getting through your deck.
Alright.
And you want to have that. I would take...
none of these are great. Guild Globe?
Maybe Kaya's Ghost Form or Naga Eternal. Probably Kaya's Ghost Form. Guild Globe's not bad.
I'd rather take a Guild Globe.
Guild Globe is kind of meh.
I
but-
might not use it, but I'm more likely to use it than any other cards. Oh, another Erratic Visionary. Or a Strix.
Oh, yeah. Steven, we want to do that at some point. Alternating draft pick.
Oh, right, sure. Oh, yeah, we should be doing that.
I would get another Erratic Visionary over a Baleful, over a Sky Theater Strix.
Really?
Yeah.
No flyer?
It's hard to make work.
I just like this because then I can attack and then kill with Vraska's Finisher. Because Planeswalkers, you need to get in the air to get down, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I just don't think it's a great card. It's a 1/2 for 2 that
Yeah.
flies and sometimes gets buff. Whereas Erratic Visionary will start drawing you cards every turn.
Okay. Ooh, Spellkeeper Weird is-
Spellkeeper Weird is pretty good.
Yeah.
We need to get some solid instants or sorceries, and we skip those for...
We take No Escape.
For... What did we take instead of? Oh, for Taskmasters.
Yes, we took Taskmaster.
Judge!
I like Taskmaster. I'm fine with that pick. Let's Have Plating's also very good.
Yeah, Last Step Plating's not bad.
And that's an instant or sorcery, but then we...
I think I'd probably take Spellkeeper first.
Yeah.
I don't like Kasmina's transformation in this. It can work,
Yeah.
but it's just not great.
I'm going to pick it now because it's the best card here,
I agree,
but we might not use it.
but we really need
Shriek Diver's not bad.
like more direct removal.
I guess I'll take Shriek Diver. These
Shriek
packs-
Diver's pretty good.
Ooh, Augur's still here.
Not good though.
You take Crush Descent?
Yeah, I don't love Crush Descent. It's too expensive.
So Augur, right?
I guess we can take Augur. We just don't have any spells to make it hit.
It's
I
still
think
a
we
1/3
probably
for
won't run
2.
it.
Still a 1/3 for 2.
Grab the Behemoth.
Yeah, the cat. This guy's good.
Yeah.
Ooh, aw.
Narset's Reversal is not great.
I don't know, it could be good in this deck.
Yeah, it's okay.
See what else we got. Thundering Drake is very good, actually. This card is solid. This card does friggin' work.
Does it?
Another Spark Reaper. Yes, this card is very good.
We just don't have many cheap spells. I think the best card in this pack is probably Chandra's Triumph, but we're not in red.
Yeah.
Is it worth it to potentially splash red? We have a Guild Globe.
I don't think so.
There's not a lot of good black or blue in this. Totally Lost is never terrible. Narset's Versal's kind of neat.
It is neat. Copy target insert. This could be our removal. If they do removal, we remove whatever they have.
Yeah, that's Magical Christmas Land.
Yeah, it is. Divine Arrow is the best card here, but we're not in white. We could switch. I'd rather switch
I think
to
Chandra's
white.
Triumph's better than Divine Arrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Doing 3 is better than doing 4?
But you can only do it when they're attacking or blocking.
Sure. But white, blue, black mesh
and
better.
Chandra's Triumph can hit Planeswalkers.
That's true.
I think it's Chandra's Triumph's way better than Divine Arrow.
Okay, I'm gonna do this quick. I think I'm just gonna take Thunder Drake because it's the best card here, and we need more 4-drops. Ooh, a Narset. I mean,
Narset's good. It's better and constructed.
it's pretty good here too.
Oh no, we should get Obnix's Cruelty.
Yeah, we get Obnix's Cruelty. Sorry.
Yeah, because we really need.
Obby Cruel. Ooh, Herald of Dreadhorde.
I like Herald of the Dreadhorde. That one's pretty good. Is Dreadhorde of Butcher good? Not in our deck, I don't think.
What card? Oh, this card? Not really.
Card to a player dies, deals damage equals power to any target.
It's not bad, but
No, I think in this we probably want to go Herald of the Dreadhorde or Teferi's Time Twist.
Herald
So okay,
for sure.
what's our plan? We're blue-black, so we want to be controlling, right?
I feel like Amass is probably what we want to go towards now.
We haven't gotten a lot of Amass.
We got. Oh, we did not take that counter, did we?
No,
The one
it's
that
a bad
Amasses.
counter. It's 4, and then it still is conditional.
Right. Yeah, that's not a good counter. No Escape is better, but has no Amass, and is conditional as well.
Yeah, I think.
I'm fine with this card.
All right, we need to think controlling from now on. We need to be doing stuff that'll kill stuff and stuff that will stop them from doing their plan.
Oh yeah. this
Haven
card,
Eternal.
for sure. Solid.
Yeah.
Solid good card. Ooh, another one. Ooh, another Thunder Drake. Double Eternal Taskmaster.
I would take an Eternal
That's
Taskmaster.
bonkers. We have so many good creatures that like returning any of them is good.
I wish we had some sack value. I guess we have a little bit. We've got the. We have something. Maybe we don't.
I can take this actually. That's a pretty solid card.
Ashik Skulker.
Yeah, can't be blocked. It'll finish out games.
It's not bad.
It's got a big beefy
Probably
butt.
better than Kaya's Ghost form.
Yeah. Ooh, a Thunder Drake.
Thunder Drake or Spark Reaper, I both think would be good. Spark Reaper is actually getting better because we have the 2 Eternal Taskmasters, so now we could start sacrificing things and bringing them back the next turn.
I'm gonna take Thunder Drake. This thing is very good because it counts as its own spell.
See,
so
I think
so
we
if you
have
play
too
one-
high a curve for that to be really realistic.
Do we?
Yeah,
This is a
all
fun
our
curve.
things are 3s.
This is a bunch of 2s. What are you talking about?
I guess.
Trust me.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Trust me.
Maybe another Shriek Diver here, or we could do a Teferi's Time Twist. It's actually pretty good protection.
Kind of want to take this. Yeah.
I'm down with that.
Iron Bully is the best card here, I think.
What does Unlikely Aid do?
Indestructible and it's 2+0.
Meh.
Maybe it's protection, but it's like,
I would do Totally Lost over those, actually.
really?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it puts it on its owner's library, so it actually like slows down their draw. Like it stops them from drawing the next one. It is card advantage, and we have very little removal.
Yeah, I guess so.
We're pretty tight.
Aid the Fallen, baby.
Yes,
'Cause
we
we
don't have
have-
any planeswalkers, but we do. We've got Kasmina. Yeah, Aid the Fallen's good.
Oh, we only have one. I thought we had 2 because we didn't take Narset.
No,
That or the counter spell, which is not great.
I hate Crush Descent. I think it's really bad.
We still get the Amass, regardless of them paying for it.
You're right. 4
So-
for a Mass 2 sucks.
It does, but just
I-
putting it out there.
I think Aid the Fallen's much better in
Okay.
this deck.
Yeah, this deck seems like a recursion. Ooh, double?
I could take a No Escape now.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sideboard's Healy Silverwing.
We don't have a sideboard. Is this traditional? No, we had ranked.
I'm just saying, we're not playing any of these. Just put it in the sideboard.
Now we
No.
have Promise.
Not good in constructed
Aha!
anyway. Angrath, on the other hand.
Angrath is a super good card.
Angrath and Kuor's Dambreaker are both pretty good. Ukin's Conjurin is actually much better than I expected.
But what's wrong with the art?
Oh, it's all like weirdly flattened.
I'm gonna take Angrath just because it helps Aid the Fallen as well.
Yeah, what,
And it helps
there's
with a
another
mass.
Spark Reaper. But I think
Yeah, it's okay.
I think I'd take Angrath over it.
You're just fuel for the fires of freedom.
Ooh, Aven Eternal. Wow.
I love Aven Eternal.
Yeah, I'm fine taking that.
What's Total the Invasion?
This is a
It's like a
discard.
Thoughtseize effect.
Ooh, Last Step Reaver is actually very good too.
I'd probably take Aven Eternal
Yeah.
over it.
I would also take Aven Eternal over that.
Aven Eternal is just such a good, solid.
I know you're.
Like
Ooh, I'd
management
rather
piece.
take Triumph, but I know you want to say Soren's Thirst.
I mean, I think Triumph is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Triumph is straight up bad.
Would you rather take Thirst? I
Because
kind of want to
90%
take.
of the time, they're just going to sacrifice like a 1/1 amass token. And you're going to be like, wow, that was not worth it.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't use it if that's the case.
Yeah, and then it's a dead in your hand. I just think Edicts... So actually, there's the Gideon card that makes them sacrifice something is really good because they have to sacrifice like their biggest attacking creature or something like that.
Right.
But Liliana's Triumph is just going to mean they get rid of whoever they care about
Wow,
least.
Death Sprout.
Ooh, Death Sprout.
We should switch to green just for that.
We could splash it, maybe. What's our
don't-
other options?
I mean,
We can't even run anything else.
we
I
can run
mean,
Unlikely Aid.
I don't think Duskmantle's going to make it at this point. We have too many good cards.
This card?
Yeah.
We have one of them already. We don't.
I know, but I'm saying, like, I don't think we would run it in
Oh,
the
no,
deck.
no.
Why don't we take Death Sprout?
Okay.
And who knows, if something comes up, it could be
Oh
yours, too.
man, a Wanderer.
Wanderer's okay. I like Dread Malkin.
Malkin's good. I could do Dread Malkin.
Or, what's that? Relentless Advance?
Mass 3 for 4. Eh.
It's not great.
And Sorcery. Eh.
Maybe Teferi's Time Twist.
We have one
right
of those.
now, I don't think,
I don't want 2 time twists.
why not? It stays good.
Better than Dread Malkin though?
How many creatures do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, we're not gonna use this. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And not counting the planeswalkers that both make
Yeah,
creatures.
we don't have any finishers either.
The Skulker's a finisher.
It's a kind of slow finisher.
I'm just so
Um,
finished.
I guess if we're going to run...
And it's a sack outlet too.
Did you just take Augur of Bolas out?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was going to say I don't think we have enough to make Augur of Bolas worth.
Yeah. I'm gonna take this.
Sure.
I like Iron Bully.
I think another Aid the Fallen might not be bad in this
No,
deck.
you don't play 2 of those.
We have so much sacrifice.
But we also have Spellkeeper that can return that card to our hand if we need it again.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, and we're low on creatures. This creature actually does a lot of work in draft.
Iron Bully?
Ooh, Daybreaker.
No, Callous Dismissal. That card is awesome.
But this is a finisher.
I guess. I think Callous Dismissal is so good. The fact that you amass and return something to your hand, it's so good. It just can be such a swing.
All right, there's another Daybreaker, so it's possible. Oof, wow.
Prismite? I mean, I don't think we're going to run it, but Prismite.
There it is.
Yeah. Maybe a no escape?
We got one of those. I'm gonna take a Total the Invasion just in case that works out better. Take this.
All right, we are basically done.
Take this. Take that. Cool. Let me just get all the chaff
Okay.
out of here.
So first thing first, get rid of stuff that's not our colors.
I don't think we're gonna use Death Sprout.
Probably not, no.
Prismite out. Makes Battalion out.
Wait, I think he just took out a black card.
Oh. I took out Sworn's
Oh.
Thirst.
Let's not take it out yet. We really don't have much removal. I've come down on Soren's Thirst. It misses a lot of important creatures.
It does, yeah.
But-
and it is double black, which
We have very little.
I'm gonna take out the Guild Globe. We only have two colors, so it should be okay.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta move 3.
3. Let's see.
Take out one Erratic Vision. We don't need 2 of these.
No, I think that'd be fine. How many? Click on our stats. Not that.
But I do want those.
We have 15 creatures.
3
That's probably
birds.
good. We have 3 birds.
I didn't know that.
Bird tribal. That us.
Bird Warrior Tribal.
Birds, 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 birds,
Bird's
birds.
the word.
Um,
Unlikely aid can go. I'm gonna take out Soren's Thirst, and then we're actually done.
wait. Let's see. How about Iron Bully? We don't have any proliferate, really. I don't think he's worth it. He's a 2/2 for 3.
But with Menace, the Menace is actually not nothing.
It's almost nothing.
It's not. It's not. Instead of Soren's Thirst, really?
I think if we had one more removal piece, I would say get rid of Soren's Thirst. But we only have 3.
Okay.
We have Obnix's Cruelty, Soren's Thirst, and Totally Lost. And that's super weak.
Okay. We're done. Here we go.
Let's try it.
Let's get in here. Oh yeah, feel better,
Yeah,
Stephen
Van
Pope.
Moon. Oh yeah, feel better.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you feel bad. Oh, I was like, why are these lights so in my eyes? It's because I'm not wearing my shades. These shades are a stylistic choice and just a choice that we don't get blinded
They're
by the
super
studio
important.
lights. But yeah, it also makes us feel real cool.
Oh, thank you for the donation probably a while back, Diana Moon. I never notice those things. If they don't make noises. Good sipping.
Oh,
That was a big gulp right there.
A delicious tea. This is probably fine.
Yeah, we got a...
I'm fine with this.
What? How much is No Escape? 3?
We have 3 drops and 4 lands.
Is No Escape only non-creatures?
It's creature or planeswalker, which is actually huge.
Oh, creature planeswalker. That's
and
not terrible.
exile and scry 1. This card does a lot. Also,
Yeah.
Azorius, boom.
I don't think the counterspells in this set are very good.
Should I remove that and put an Iron Bully?
No, I think it's fine to have. I still think it's probably okay having one.
Look, they mold.
Oh, sweet.
Dr. Spodna Canaculum.
Spotnaculum!
Uh-oh. Turn 1 Banehound. You kidding me?
Oh boy. What are you gonna do about that? But, I mean, we're gonna block it with our...
Jack Diddley.
We're gonna block it with the amass token that thing creates.
Why not block up this guy? It's a 2/2. Dreadhorde Butcher. Oh, snap.
It has Death Touch.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't. It's Lifelink and Haste. I thought it had Death Touch and Lifelink. But that's that new whatchamacallit. Alright, Dreadhorde Butcher's good.
I will straight up block this guy.
This is a really cool version of this song.
I will cross block. We'll block all. No, don't kill it! You piece of crap.
Make it indestructible.
Alright, so the problem with this guy is if we don't block him, he starts getting huge.
Well, let's throw in a mass token in front of him.
Also, we could Callous Dismissal eventually.
Yeah, if we draw it.
Should we put a token in front of him? Because then he can attack.
I mean, you're kind of counting on our 1 in like 35 chance of drawing Callous Dismissal.
I guess. Okay. I guess let's do this so we can block this.
Yeah,
Or I can do this to block it.
sure.
I'd probably rather have the flyer, I think.
Yeah, and we could hold on to Vraska's finisher. Oh, I thought you were gonna...
Oh no, I'd wanted to block this guy. Because then if he somehow pumps it, I can still... If
We
he
don't
like...
really have any enablers for Vraska's finisher.
I mean, any damage will enable it.
Yeah, but we don't have a way to deal damage.
They're looking at the top card of our library. That's bullshit.
We don't have any way to deal direct damage, though.
What, any damage is damage. What are you talking about? They know we have a swamp. Now what? We hold up
wait,
no escape?
Wait, read Vraska's finisher?
Those dealt damage this turn. It's any damage. So if you attack a planeswalker and then play this, you will kill the planeswalker.
Yes, but we don't have a ton of ways to... Like, we don't have that many attackers, even.
This guy can do it, but being unblocked.
Sure.
It also works on creatures. It's a good card, trust me. I want to play this so we can block some more. No attacks. Okay, I think we're okay now. Except for
He's
that,
got some blockers.
except for that 2/3 flyer, which would be annoying, but what can we do?
We can start holding up no escape,
Yeah.
so that'll be nice. And then we can, well, start beating in. That flyer's gonna put a real clock on things.
They're playing 3 colors. See what they got.
Why do they have green? Let's find out.
Maybe they're playing Death Sprout. Are they gonna sprout some death?
Yeah, they're right. We didn't stick with Aurelia for some reason. We're Jace Epic Dweeb now.
Yeah, see, that wasn't a thing.
Rubble Belt Guy.
Why didn't they play that first?
What do those do?
They're a 0/4 that gains X among creatures that are attacking.
Oh,
so it
that's
can be,
good.
I mean, it's going to be a 2/4 at best. Okay, so now I can hold up No Escape and play one of these.
Maybe...
Just the Visionary, so we can start filtering?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Because if they don't do anything, we have something to do with that mana. Well, I mean, not next turn, but in the future.
Yeah. Alright, stalemate. Just a nice old stalemate. Pass to attackers. Alright, take 2 in the air. They want to send somebody else.
I don't know the song, but I like it.
Well, that's...
They want to give that guy. I don't know why they're doing it, actually. It kind of worries me.
I mean, we do the blocks, though, right? Like,
yeah.
let's kill this.
It feels like a trap, but we might have to do it.
I mean, if they could pump this for 3,
I bet they have Chandra's.
that's fine. They still lose this. Do I block this with this? Right? We can't take that much damage, and I'm fine losing this if they want to play it.
Yeah, okay.
And we gotta take 2 in the air no matter what. Play Flash Creature. Do it. I think there was a Flash Creature that they could play to do that, but whatever.
What do they got? Band Together. That'll do it.
They still lose their thing, though.
No, they don't.
They'll lose this I'm talking about. Because it only does
Our
4
guy
damage.
is- Oh, you're right. It only
So-
does 4.
Fine?
Huh. Alright. That makes it at least a 2-for-1 for us.
To any target. Oh, so they're gonna kill something else. That's
Oh.
fine. Whatever.
Okay, yeah. That sucks.
Hey, the Fallen. So we can return one of these if we wanted to.
Kinda might need Ashiok Skulker. Or we could... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I say we do this because it's flying. And then,
Sure, and then
we-
that can block that other guy.
Well, not
You can't
favorably.
block it.
If we had both of them out, it could. So why don't we play the Streak Diver this turn? Hold up the counter spell.
Aid the Fallen's not an instant, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
If they don't attack, I don't think we're gonna. I guess we could just. Yeah, we'll do that, right?
Yeah. No escape.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no to that because that's
That
gonna
thing's
become,
too big.
That's gonna make this thing a big fatty.
That would
too.
destroy that board parity.
No, thank you. We did it. Counterspell. We did it.
Yay! Woo! Blue, 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 blue.
Blue.
Always blue. Always blue.
Yeah, I guess I'll walk here. Okay,
I
that's
like
actually
Kasmina.
great.
Should we play Kasmina, tick her down, and hold on to the Aid the Fallen for a little bit? Because we're gonna get to start looting,
My
right?
instruction, and prepare for war. We are the future.
Do we... Let's drop the Dreadmalkin.
Yeah.
Because they'll probably try and kill Kasmina, which they think will mean we don't get any value.
Yeah. Do we aid the fallen this turn though?
No, let's see if they kill Kasmina.
I don't think they can. They can only do 2.
Well, let's...
In which case, she's useless.
Well, let's see what they do.
Okay, let's find out. I'm kind of fine blocking here, actually.
What's her passive ability?
Spells that your opponent casts target creature your planeswalker you control cost 2 more to cast.
Yeah, so they might want to kill her.
I imagine they'll definitely go attacking her. Do we block it, though?
No. Right? We'd rather them spend 2 turns attacking her.
They were going to spend 1 turn. They wouldn't attack this again.
Why not?
The passive's not that great,
It's pretty good if they want to remove our stuff.
I guess. They don't need to remove stuff. They can do 2 damage forever. Man, this card
Okay.
sucks.
Oh, why didn't you Erratic Visionary?
Because I forgot. I can do it now.
We don't want to do it on our turn. I mean, I guess we could.
So
I mean,
I can-
I guess you can aid the Fallen now, but it's just...
I can Aid the Fallen and then do this next turn. This turn. Aid the Fallen into Aven Eternal. Right?
Yeah, it would be nice to get both.
It would be, but beggars can't be choosers. We are falling behind. Aven Eternal.
Ashiok is super weird in Mace. There
As
was
a card?
there was a
Yeah.
thing to no as a what is Ashiok?
Oh, as a yeah.
Like in wait.
Oh, because we have to discard it? No, we
Yeah.
don't have mana anyways. We wouldn't be able to do it.
Sure, but it's still the point where since we can loot every turn, holding on to lands is useful that way.
Maybe they'll make us draw a card. You don't know.
I mean, I kind of do. That is sort of something I doubt will happen.
I say we attack with these 2. Nope, can't do that. We are so defensive right now. We are in defense mode. Pass turn.
All right. If we draw a land next time, we might want to just Erratic Visionary main phase.
Yep, no text. Huh.
Council Dismissal seems pretty good.
Does it right now?
We could get rid of their flyer.
I mean, it doesn't kill it. They just get to play it again next turn, and then we're back.
Sure.
We're back at square one.
Let me see it.
See what? The flyer or?
We could recast Kasmina.
That's funny.
Dismiss Kasmina, recast her, make another wizard.
Yeah, fuck it. Unless they kill it.
Of course, we don't get the draw card advantage. So
Yeah.
maybe hold on making that wizard.
I will not
Really?
be under-
Yeah, let's do it next turn when we have a card, so we can cycle through.
We're not gonna attack, right?
No, I don't think so. Although, what do we have in this deck that's going to win eventually?
Dam Breaker. The Breaker of Dams. Also, I almost said Astaroth, but it's the other Minotaur. Angrath.
Angrath.
We'll give everything Menace. And a Mass too.
Yeah, she's real strange, and there's also like today. That's yes.
I mean, yeah.
Oh, that feels great.
So,
So let's kill their flyer and roll in with our flyers, right?
yeah, let's end this game.
Today on Mark Rosewater's Tumblr, or wherever it is,
Tumblr?
like Blogatog, or
Oh, that is on-
whatever. I think it's on Tumblr.
I think you're right. It's just funny to think about.
He was writing about because people were asking about why there weren't more non-human planeswalkers, and he was like, "We actually have a lot of non-human planeswalkers," and he listed all of them, and he was like, "Yeah, we've got a Minotaur, we've got this," and he's like, "We have whatever Ashiok is," and everyone's like, "What is Ashiok?"
Would you explain what Ashiok is to us? All right, Doctor.
Yeah, beans.
Beans?
Beans.
Now?
Oh, I see it now.
But we almost got through. No! I mean,
Thank
yes.
you for the donation,
Uh-oh.
Diana Moon.
We have to sacrifice a planeswalker.
Oh, if sacrifice a planeswalker? Bummer. All right, we got 2 beans. They're in the cup, Diana Moon.
I don't think we're going to lose this game, though.
I don't know.
Some pretty good hands, unless they play some sort of board wipe thing or
This is such a bomby format that they could play
Ooh,
like
time
one of
twist.
the gods and just wreck us.
I'm gonna time twist this guy, and it'll be fucking bonkos.
Let's wait.
I mean, yeah, I mean as a response.
Yeah, I was like, let's wait for them to like remove something and then be like, screw you, time twist.
Time twist. But it
Time
amasses
twister.
this too, which is great.
Yeah. All right, so we are on the aggressive end now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is such a bomby format because there's such big, like the gods especially, are such enormous
Yeah.
creatures and stuff. They could easily play something like that, and we could
Oh
really.
hell yeah.
That is pretty good. All right, so let's attack with our flyers, and let's start remembering to loot.
Well, there's nothing to loot. Would you? I wouldn't give this away.
But you get to draw first, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't have given this away either. They're both good cards.
Yeah, but what if you draw something better?
It would have been this, and then what we would have done?
We would have.
You don't have to
away.
loot. We're fine. There's no reason to throw away cards currently.
Looting is just straight up better.
I don't think that's true. If we draw a land,
absolutely
if we
is.
draw, it's for filtering. I'm not going to filter good cards out.
That's not true at all.
Look, in this case, it would have been bad.
I wouldn't have.
Yes, it would have. We would have.
Who knows if the card that's next is better?
I know.
You can't think like that.
Um,
It's gambler's fallacy. You're looking at the result that happened last time and thinking, therefore, it's always worse.
Man, Jordan, eat my butt.
It's card selection is always good.
Oh, here it comes. Here it comes. Oh,
Hot.
you goofed. You have so much goof. Oh my good god. This is gonna bring a concede no matter what. I
What you gonna do?
Straight up.
Nixos'
think.
cruelty.
Straight up concede.
Fwap.
You have turned it. Oh, oh, oh. See? Also a good card. Glad
Yeah.
I didn't throw it away.
But it doesn't make
Shut
any
up,
sense.
Jordan.
You still just get to pick the best cards in your deck that way.
I'm correct this time. Shut up.
You're not.
I am right. Eat it. Eat it. Eat it. They're gonna gain a life.
One life. It will not save them.
Well,
This will not save them either.
that's game.
We got it. We can roll in with everything now, right?
I mean, I guess rolling with
Yeah.
flyers and win.
Die, Dr.
GG.
Spodaculum.
Sorry, no beans for
Oh,
us.
looks like these beans will just sit here.
Also, if the beans don't get eaten by the time the show ends, Dom has to eat them. That's a new rule that
That
Dom
is the
wanted
rule.
to do because he was like, I'm missing out on these beans.
Dom
Like,
was insistent.
What's that like?
Woo, we got XP.
All right.
Guild Mage. I'm gonna run the bathroom real quick.
Round 2. I can feel Dom shaking his head thinking about the looting. Yeah, he pretty much is. I'm shaking my head and I'm here. All right, guys. While Jordan's gone, let's just talk about something. Like, he was wrong about that looting, right? Like, he's totally wrong. Like, I didn't need to do it. It's just fine. Our hand was fine. If we had a land, like, I'd throw it away. But it wasn't necessary. Actually, the Visionary actually makes his hand decent. As I badmouth Jordan about looting, I'm gonna keep this hand because of looting. But it's fine. Don't listen to him. Ooh, turn 1 card. Wow, must be nice. Ashok was Nichols' head the whole time. That's like a fan theory, I think. That people were like, what if it's Ashiok's dream realm that they're inside? Burning Prophet.
What black mana do we have?
None!
None.
I kept it because we had a looter!
We have no black mana.
But we do have a callous dismissal! I guess you could attack with this. I could double block. You wouldn't do that. That'd be a dumb idea.
Well, at least if we callous dismissal something. I guess erratic visionary.
As they finish scrying. Ah!
Well, I don't know. What do you think? I think Erratic Visionary is... They're both pretty good.
I can't. I'd be afraid to block with this because it might die.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
What do you think?
It's just, if we had black mana, I'd be more confident in Spellkeeper Weird. But Erratic Visionary is going to help us get black mana.
We can still dismissal next turn if we don't get it.
Yeah. But then we're stuck
I'd rather
if we don't draw black mana.
I'd rather block this every turn, I think. Because this thing's going to get out of hand. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, I guess. I think we're just really going to be in trouble if we don't draw any black mana. And we could just sit here and do nothing.
Or
but we got to even.
Look at a turtle, baby! This card's so good.
Black Manta. Yes, if we don't draw Black Manta, we are in trouble. Hey, Dom, how close are we to the everybody gets
$31.
$31?
Iron Bully! I fucking told you about this Iron Bully. Now we're gonna get bullied by him. We're gonna get super bullied.
I'm not afraid of that Iron Bully.
Oh my god.
I'm not afraid of that Iron Bully. 1/1 with
Ooh.
Menace.
Should we hold up a counter or a Callous Dismissal?
No, let's Callous Dismissal the Dreadmalkin. Make him feel like an idiot. Right? That's funny, isn't it? It's funny.
It is kind of funny.
Hilarious.
But, but it's a 1-mana thing. I don't think it's worth it. I think we save this. I think we just hold up.
What did Sacrifice Thing do?
What does this do? So I feel like if they're going to do it next turn, then we do it. Like, they can attack us for 1 turn for 4, and then get it bounced.
All right.
Bird's a word, though, right?
Oh, I saw these guys. Oh, this is probably on your playlist.
This is mine, yeah. You saw these guys?
Yeah, I saw Dawes. I saw Dawes at the Troubadour.
I want to see Dawes.
Which is like...
Sweet.
No, did I see Dawes? No, I saw them at some venue here. I went to the Troubadour the night before, but
Play
I saw them
Angrath. Play Angrath.
But Dawes is really good.
Yeah,
they put on a really good live show. They also mentioned Charlottesville in one of their songs, and I went to college in Charlottesville. And then there was a big old riot thing.
Okay, here's my plan. Block. He's going to sack it to this, and then we bounce it next turn.
Sure.
What do you think about that? We lose a token, but, like, who gives a crap? Right?
Sure.
Is that too greedy? Do it. Do the thing.
It's a lot. We lose 5 this turn, right? Probably, maybe even more.
I guess they could also play a card, but it seems like they're going to use this ability. Is what I'd guess. Or maybe both. I don't know what he's doing. Mo!
Well, we have no escape.
Mo, what are you doing? Yeah.
But they couldn't play a creature now.
No. I mean, they could be a flash creature, but I don't know what flash creature exists in red-black. I don't think there is one.
I don't think there's anything.
I was really thinking about it. Oh, yes. Sweet baby Jesus.
Now we know escape it. Kaboom!
Kabongo! Ah, damn it.
Bottom.
Oh. But the scry's great.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't do this thing, but I guess Jai's better.
Yeah.
Finisher.
See. Gah. Gah.
Sorry?
Gah. We ain't got no black.
Well, I kept a risky hand. I knew what I was doing. I don't... I feel like if they kill this, we can just, like, get this card back or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I'd rather get Callous Dismissal back.
Do you want to use this now?
Let's dismissal the cat, and then in the future we have...
Okay. Haha! Gotcha. We totally got him.
Got him. Oh yeah, I love the art on Burning Prophet.
Yeah, Burning Prophet's great. What?
Get back!
It's funny that they just like sent an army from Amonkhet, and they also did some cats for
They also had
funsies.
cats, right.
They also were like, what if we just mummify some cats
Because the Egyptians mummified their cats.
and make them some robots? Like, what if we did that?
We are in trouble.
Yeah, Turret Ogre is a big old beefy boy
Yeah.
that requires multiple blocks.
All right.
Huh. Here's what we could do.
Yeah.
We could sack this for Callous Dismissal, bounce Turret Ogre.
Let's use it as a blocker at least first, right? Because it doesn't have trample. So let's play the island.
What do
Block the Turret Ogre.
we still attack, right? We're not going to block anything.
Sure.
Might as well get the damage. And there's nothing I can block with this guy, so.
Yeah, so we block it with Spellkeeper Weird. Get back.
Oh, it
Callous
has reach!
Dismissal.
No!
Oh, yeah. We shouldn't have done that. Womp! We are in trouble now.
Why did I do this?
Yeah, that sucks.
What a dumb idea.
Well,
Give me a bean.
a bean from the box or a bean from our cup?
Box. I'm just gonna eat this bean because I feel like crap.
Here's your bean. May it be not bad.
It tastes great.
He got a good bean. And you know what I think that means? I think that means it's okay. All right, it's their turn, right? So we can still do this. We can still block with the Spellkeeper Weird and then sack it in order to get the thing back and then Callous Dismissal it next turn.
Submit one.
Submit!
Alright, then attack all. That's weird.
They might have worried we had some tricky trick.
Phew! Damn!
Bummer. We could have also maybe blocked for one turn with this, and then Callous Dismissal and had another one to block. Because it's not like we have a plan after.
I'm not gonna play this land.
Why?
There's no reason to.
We have Cura's Dam Breakers.
Right, but if we draw it next turn, then we could still play the land.
But if we draw a black mana, then we're behind on our put down.
We couldn't draw both of those cards.
I know, but I'm saying like we're working towards Cura's Dam Breaker, so we want to put down a land every turn if we can still.
Yeah, but if we draw a black source, we'll play a black source. We
I
can't,
guess I don't understand the advantage of keeping it.
because we could discard it to something else.
We could discard any of those. We can't play them.
I'd rather discard a land than any of those.
I mean, I wouldn't right now.
Yeah, right now I probably wouldn't. I mean, I feel like I trade here, right?
Sure.
They put our counter on something, but they also lose a 4/1. Unless they got a trick. Oh, they get a Torrid Ogre. Oh, not this turn, though.
Pump up the Burning Prophet.
I would have figured keeping 2 blue on turn 1 and getting this many draws, you would have drawn a black source.
Maybe.
But, well, there it is.
There we go.
See, if we draw Kiara's Danberg next turn, we're still on track. Doesn't make a difference.
We're one turn behind.
No, we're not.
We could have played it next turn if we had played that.
We can still play it next turn because we can play this land.
Isn't it 7?
No, it's 6.
Oh, I still don't see why we held it.
All right. Well, that's why. Herald. So Turret Ogre does 2 damage to us. But it won't trigger. Okay. So next turn we can get Taskmaster going. That'd be sweet. These guys, if we have 2 of them, we can also just loop them.
That'd be neat.
This seems like a trick, but I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I still think we probably do it because if he dies, it's fine, you know.
Yeah.
Although it could probably pump it up, but I think
I imagine they're going to use the +1 indestructible thing.
maybe not a lot of people run that. It's not very good.
Oh, I guess I could sack it to the cat.
Yeah, they could.
That doesn't seem like a good idea.
Well, it's a lot of damage.
Oh, now it triggers Turret Ogre.
Yes, it does.
It's pretty clever.
Now it's a Turd Ogre cat. And that'll kill our Herald of the Dread Horde. Oh, hit
No,
us.
they can only target us.
Just target us? Okay.
Oh shit. You ready for this card to be good?
Y'all ready for this?
Boom, baby! Oh, get around that, mofo.
Alright, and do we attack? No, let's leave him as a blocker.
We
because-
are in Block City!
Yeah.
One of them has Menace.
Oh, yeah.
So Menace, that's gonna kill our Thunder Drake.
Bummer.
I mean, but we don't have a choice here. But then we get to start getting creatures back. That or we let it through and just kill this.
Can we take 4?
We're taking 4 regardless. We can't, one of them has Menace.
So which one do you want to kill? If he pumps the Dread Malkin and we double block, we lose both.
No. Oh yeah, we do. But so does he. He still loses both.
That's true.
So.
Alright, let's block the Dread Malkin then.
Then we get to amass.
And he still kills our Thunder Drake.
Yes. Do it, do it, do it. Isn't a good idea. I mean, they probably should not do it. Yeah, okay. That was the right move.
Alright, we're in a tight spot. Another black is great, actually. So what was the Eternal Taskmaster's thing?
So, whenever he attacks, you can play that, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand.
So what can we play if we pull it back?
We can play the Aven. We can play the Spellkeeper. We
The
can
Aven's
probably...
pretty good because then we have our the blocker from it.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm just going to attack with this, do that thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. Because this can kind of provide us chump blockers like almost indefinitely.
Right, exactly. That's why this card is bonkos.
All right, okay, so we could make this work. I mean, we're one direct damage spell away from just dying if he has Heartfire.
Also true. If he has
but
that,
that's not going to change.
yeah, that doesn't change anything. We played your outs.
Yeah.
If he has Trample, he also wins. I don't think Black or Red could have Trample. I don't think it does. Like Nahiri Stoneblades, does that give Trample? I don't know.
I don't think so.
The bully!
I don't think that makes a difference.
No, we're just gonna double block it. Just these 2 block, right?
Yeah.
Because next turn we just get this back.
Or we could block with the Aven Eternal and the Herald of the Dread Horde, pull back the Aven Eternal and cast it again. Or we could pull... How much does the Herald of the Dread Horde
4.
cost? Do we have enough to play that? 5?
We have exactly that much.
7. Okay, cool.
Oh, he's not attacking. He figured it out.
He's like, oh, wait.
And now we have Raska's Finisher, so if he does block, this thing
So,
dies.
Let's play our island.
Island.
Attack in the air.
Nope, he has reached. Let's not do that again. Oh,
But
wait.
then we could grasp
Yes!
his finisher it.
Yes! Let's fall for it again, but this time on purpose.
Yeah, he'll be like, oh, I forgot. By just attacking with the air one, it totally is a bait. He's like, idiot.
What a stupid, dumb idiot. What? Oh no!
Oh, Vraska's finisher.
Fucking got you, fucking school.
You've been got.
It was a long-term con. We fell for it the first time on
Now,
purpose.
let's not play the Streak Diver because we can pull back the Aven Eternal.
We can what? No, we
Oh,
can't.
we could have played the Streak Diver.
Yeah. That's what I was like, what are you talking about? We have to attack.
I forgot.
people.
I keep thinking it's on upkeep.
Nah, have to
Or
attack.
it's like, yeah.
Gotta get them attack season, baby. Up, yep.
Ah, hard
There it is.
fire.
Yep.
That was always going to kill us.
Yep. Not much you can do against that.
Nope.
Well, that's a game.
There we go. So you know what that means.
Yep. Oh, damn it, I just had a bean.
All right. I gotta
That,
grab,
that bean left to this bean.
grab a water.
You picked white ones, great. This will be fun.
I just pulled out 2 out, and they happen to both be white.
Oh my god, same exact hand.
Definitely mullet.
Well, we got the looter.
But you killed the looter last time.
Well, this time I don't have to, and now we can loot away an island.
Well, let's
And
loot away
we
things
don't go
can't
first.
play.
And we don't go first, and most of our cards are blue.
All right, I guess we can keep it.
This is fine. Trust me, what are the chances?
All right.
This is where someone edits this fast forwarding us to losing.
Cheers.
Oh yeah, here we go.
To
Cheers,
disgusting
everybody.
beans.
Castles and chemo!
No.
Yep, there's a bar.
Oh wait, mine's okay.
What? You cheated!
I thought it was bad at first.
Ah! Egg.
Mine is fine. It just is it's coconut,
Hey, Black, we did it.
and it tastes a little weird at first. Hooray! All right, everything worked out.
Yeah, I think I'm getting used to the taste of rotten egg. It's not
You're
that
like,
bad.
I've had enough of this one though.
I got some eggs in my fridge. I might give them a go.
Is this your playlist again?
I think so. Ooh, yeah. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to attack into this horse, and they're going to be like, what are you doing?
And then you Vraska's finisher it?
Yeah.
Tight.
Do you think that's a funny joke?
I think that's tight. I'm watching all these Scream Rant has pitch meeting sketches, and one of their ongoing jokes is that someone would be like, yeah, big explosions are tight.
Don't fall for that. You're better than this.
Beautiful.
You stupid goof. You stupid.
Let's finish him.
You stupid goof.
Ah, boop.
Tell you, man, this finisher does work. Blah.
The Magic player's one weakness.
What?
Losing all their life. Are you okay? You got it? Is it down? These things linger.
Thanks for the beans, Mana Pool.
Ooh, Crunch Wrangler. Crunch Wrangler is real good.
Sigh.
Alright, so right now I say we attack with everything.
Even this?
Yeah. Because we want to, if they want to trade a Crunch Wrangler right now, then I say we'd let them. Because those things get so big really fast.
We can just bounce it.
Yeah, but I don't know. I like letting them make the trade instead of them dumping a bunch of, because they're going to have big creatures.
Oh, they have divine thingamabob.
What?
They have divine arrow. It's 2 mana. White.
Oh.
I realized after I attacked.
How do you know?
Oh. This is worse. This is worse than divine arrow.
Well, now we can Callous Dismissal it. What did they do? They just gave it a +1 counter, right?
I feel like we should.
And it's indestructible?
It's
Oh, it had first strike is what it did. Yeah.
I think we spend our mana better. Okay,
How
here's
long
the
does
thing.
it keep
here's the
first
thing.
strike?
We Thunder Strike, so the next turn we can play both of these, and this gets a counter,
All right.
right? It keeps a counter forever, but then if they play a 4-drop, it's even better.
Yeah, it's gonna get Bonko.
It's fine. We'll bounce it.
Yeah.
We got a plan.
Rising Populus. This card's okay.
Oh, they didn't even attack.
I'm a little surprised.
I'm also a little surprised. Now they must have Divine Arrow, right?
If they had Divine Arrow, why didn't they attack?
Because we weren't going to block.
I don't
wouldn't.
understand the reasoning there.
Would you have blocked this?
Huh?
Would you have blocked this?
No, but it would have just been like a completely risk-free attack
That's what I'm saying.
if they had divine.
I
Arrow.
don't know why they didn't attack. I'm very confused.
Yeah.
Uh,
All right. Do we want to Callous Dismissal Spellkeeper weird? Roll in. I mean, we can't just assume they have. They didn't have it last time.
I'd rather just attack now, maybe? I guess it doesn't matter.
What's your plan if they block?
I guess it doesn't matter. Well, they must not have Divine Arrow. They must have another,
Yeah, they probably have some
the,
green sorcery.
the same
pump.
thing. This thing. They might have another one of these. This
Sure,
is actually
something like that.
very good. It's not a kill spell. You get nothing. Get out of here. Oh, and a mass one. We can start looting these lands away now.
Yeah.
Go, go, Thunder Drake.
Do they got it?
Don't got
Doesn't
it.
seem like it.
Just afraid of Divine Arrow all the time.
Crunch, crunch!
Sometimes when I'm crossing the road downtown,
It's like, what if there's a divine arrow?
I'm like, what? Like
trust
cars
me.
are okay, but divine arrows?
I think that all the time.
Keep missing the N in that creature. Crotch Wrangler? So it's just Crotch Wrangler?
Crotch Wrangler.
Why haven't we been saying that the whole time? Oh, now we can loot so many lands away.
Shit, yeah.
I'm gonna play a Swerp.
Swarm.
And go to Clombat.
Combat. Drake in the air.
Drake, baby.
And we can always sack Spellgorger. Do we want to... Let's loot on their turn.
Yes, for sure.
Because if something bad happens, we can always use Spellgorger weird and pull back our Callous Dismissal for next turn.
I mean, it's gotta be something pretty big.
Big ol' beefy boy.
Uh-oh. It's a Sergeant of Loxodons.
He's not very good. I mean, he is good, but he's not.
Everything gains Vigilance? Are you kidding me?
For one turn.
Yeah. That
Still doesn't make it any easier for him to attack through a board we can block on.
That may be true, but...
Which in this case means it is sort of nothing.
Another land? Oh, we don't need this land. Totally lost.
Is Totally Lost an instant?
It is, baby.
Tight. Let's get in the air, right?
Thunder Drake is love. Thunder Drake is life.
Totally Lost feels pretty good here, honestly.
They keep looking at their hand. Oh, now we can totally lost
I
this
think
thing.
he's a little lost. Am I right?
I don't think you're supposed to be here today.
Loxodon Surgeon, were you supposed to go there? Because
I don't think you were.
I don't think you were.
I think you goofed.
You might be a little lost.
Yeah.
I still think we should have played one of the...
Well, you're wrong. I'm sorry. We are at 6.
We got Biggie Boys. And we could also play multiple things.
If we draw multiple things, we only have one thing right now.
Yeah, but we can loot things away.
I know, and then we can play one of the lands. And it'll be fine. Oh, we haven't drawn a Planeswalker yet.
No, we haven't. All right.
Thunder
Thunder in the air?
Yep, seems like a good a plan as any. Told you, man, this dude does work. Yeah, I'm fine with
Let's
this.
hold on to it. I still think you should... Like, 6 is still, we could do with more.
Uh-oh, they have a flyer
And we have another land to loot away.
that dies immediately. Will they attack? No, they will not. There's the dam breaker. We don't need another swamp. Yeah, that's gonna...
That's pretty good.
that's gonna...
That's a good
pretty
dam
good.
breaker right now.
This is a pretty good dam breaker. Ooh, can we play both?
No, because you don't play lands!
Well, I had to sack the land.
We could...
I mean, I'm fine just dam
Let's
breaking.
just dam breaker.
Yeah, it's really not a big
and
deal.
roll in.
It's really not a big deal. It's
Yeah.
a very good play.
And dam breaker gives it a token.
Yeah, exactly.
And then next turn we could play both.
Yeah.
Submit 2.
I'll submit 2 of these.
Double submit.
I feel like we got this in the bag, right?
It feels pretty good right now. I don't see what their path of coming back from this is.
Block Divine Arrow. Don't got it.
Huh. Not blocking is a confusing choice to me there.
Well,
Oh, that's a less confusing choice. Hooray!
losing the game. We did it.
These aren't new beans, are they, Dom?
No.
Shoo!
So how's everybody's night been? We're 2.5 hours
How's the mana pool doing?
into our stream. How's the mana pool tonight?
Stick your hand in there, see how it feels. Whoa, not that deep, man. Jeez. Gross. Oh, this is a solid keep.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Keep city.
Keep city. James Roden, the unlocks command is now just Dom paste something.
You were
into
literally
the chat.
asking Dom for something, which is fine.
It works.
He
It should
doesn't
work.
mind.
See?
Our robot's just a little slow. I'm sorry.
Let's see if their augur of bolus hits.
Chocolate tart.
Nope.
Chocolate tart? Chocolate tart.
Augur missed because augur's bad and limited.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not great. Tired, but I exist in a perpetual state of tired.
Yeah, I get that.
Why are you so
Not
tired?
too shabby, Diana Moon. That's good.
Tell us about your work days, everyone. Alright, they're playing red blue. I mean, maybe they're playing spells, a bunch of spells. Uh-oh. Uh-oh!
Oh no!
We made fun of that augur, now it's coming for us.
I mean, that doesn't make it good.
Doesn't it, though?
No.
It didn't.
It's like any other 2-drop would have been better.
I'm not going to attack so we can loot,
Sure.
because we need either cruelty or bounce.
Yes.
We dig in for cruelty, we dig in for bounce. Yeah. That's a
This
card.
song's awesome.
This anime?
Is this like a Chinese anything goes?
Yes.
This is awesome.
This is Temple of Doom.
This is Temple of Doom?
The beginning of Temple of Doom. This is just the beginning of the racist antics they get up to in Temple of Doom.
Well, that's a weird, but...
Weird's good blocker.
Oh, against this thing?
Mm-hmm.
We can't block both. Yeah, I
no,
guess
we can't. Although we could block the Conjurant, and then it's in Erratic Visionary blocking range. If we block it once.
Oh, that's true. No taxis. That means we take 3 here, though.
Yeah, but...
What if they proliferate at instant speed?
They could. I think there's something that does that.
In red and blue, yeah, I would almost certainly... Well, didn't do it at that speed.
Yeah, they did it at sorcery speed.
Also good. Well,
Their deck seems good so far.
I guess we take 8 damage.
I mean, the Augur Bolus doesn't seem good, but... I guess if they had... if they're just, like, loaded up with spells...
Wow.
I would see. Dang!
Jesus. They're like board wipes. What are those?
We could double block the Conjurant, lose 1 guy, take it down to a 2/2.
Oh, man, I guess. Doesn't feel great, but...
Don't feel great, no. We'll probably take our Spellkeeper weird. Although we don't have any spells, so maybe they'll take our Erratic Visionary.
Oof. finisher.
All right, but what to do now? What do we do?
So this could be a blocker for this guy. I have
How
no
about
answers.
Herald the Dreadhorde? Because if that blocks and dies, we at least get an amass token, which can block something else.
Yerp. Yerp. What song is this? This is great.
Physical warehouse labor, James Roden?
Is this Indiana Jones too? Damn, Indiana Jones was jamming.
No.
Imbiamba Jones.
Imbiamba? Yeah. Man, that movie had a lot of problems. If it was made today, it'd be different.
All right, well, we go here.
Or let's block the Conjurant with the Erratic Visionary. And Herald of the Dreadhorde do one of those.
But that's first strike.
So what?
But they're looking at their hands so much, man. I'm scared.
But right now we definitely lose somebody. That way we lose something if they throw a card at it.
You got me there. If they don't pump all their dudes, just pump one dude. I guess they could have 2 spells. They do have 5 mana. This isn't looking good.
No, this is not looking great.
We got a big beefy blocker next turn.
Big beefy boy.
Who could bump the tokens?
Yeah, see? That's,
That doesn't do anything. That's gonna make it a 1/1.
yeah, that's gonna make it a 1/1. I think maybe they didn't realize how that one worked.
Cool. It's a solid, terrible move.
Do we want to? Can we Thunder Drake and do something?
Mm-mm.
We don't have enough.
We could do it with 1 more mana,
Or
but we have.
we
not
could
enough.
Thunder Drake Vraska's finisher, couldn't we? No, we only have. Yeah, we don't have enough.
We're-
I see.
We need big beefy
we don't
blocker,
get
right?
any Cures Dambreaker value.
No, we don't. But we also don't die. Is what we're trying to
Well,
do.
we could Angrath and. No, I think you're maybe. We could Angrath, do the guy,
Yeah.
and block with the token and the Herald of the Dreadhorde next time we play Cures Dambreaker and pump the token.
All right. Let's see if they attack this instead.
Come on!
Could also loot, I guess, but
We can loot later. We could block loot if we have to.
this thing had flash. It'd be busted if it had flash, though.
I know.
All right. Yeah. Go after that.
Do we want to block with any of our dudes, or do we just want to let him take it? I say let him take it.
I say we block it so then we can proliferate next turn, and have we amass with this. It'll be a 4/4. Then we proliferate and then amass again. We'll have a 7/7.
What are we blocking with? What are you thinking?
This guy.
That guy? All right, I like that. Although, we might need more bodies.
We're gonna make another body. Well,
All right.
we'll make a beefier body.
Yeah, will be one big beefy boy.
Let's hope they don't have Callous Dismissal.
We're in a Heartfire death situation again.
I don't think. Do we loot here?
I kind of think so.
Okay.
We can't play the Thunder Drake. Do we have things in our graveyard for Aid the Fallen?
We have Herald. Yeah, we have 2 things. And then we're about to have Angrath.
If Angrath hits the battlefield, we could pull back Spellkeeper Weird and Angrath, and then Aid the Fallen, and pull the Aid the Fallen back with Spellkeeper when he dies.
What am I dropping now, though?
Right now, I would do the Thunder Drake.
Not the finisher? I think the finisher.
Oh, yeah, probably the finisher.
Yeah. Be fine with finisher. Ooh!
That feels great.
Yeah, that's gonna feel real good. We can't.
Okay.
We can't hold it up though. Is the problem?
So let's do we want to cure his Dambreaker?
Well, we have to amass.
All right,
Ramming speed!
and then cure his Dambreaker while we still have 2 things to proliferate.
Yes.
Now we just need to not die this turn.
What if I attack with a 7/7 with menace though?
Then we have 2 blockers.
Yeah, I guess so. But I just think we have to eventually start attacking. And this is
They don't have a lot of damage on the board.
yeah.
I say do it.
If they remove for this, though, then we're kind of sucked on
You're
blockers.
right. We are
That's
dead
the only
if
thing.
that happens.
But it is at 5-6.
But what's the other plan? Like, how do we win if we?
I mean,
can't
if they
attack?
bounce this, we can still block this and take 3. We're not dead. We're just very close to dead.
Okay, yeah, let's attack, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because when you have a 7/7,
And it might not last all turn. It
No.
might not last forever. They're gonna chump. They're gonna amass. They're gonna double.
they've
block.
got to double block.
Oh yeah, it's menace. Oh yeah. See, they have less guys now. They have
That
2
true?
guys. They have 2 guys. We have 2 guys. Pulled it
They have
back,
3 guys.
baby.
Oh, they do have 2 guys because they
Yeah.
already had one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pulled it back from the brink, baby. Okay, that's a card.
Blamazon, fulfillment centers, sort centers, and Amazon delivery stations. And you
Ooh,
work at a
totally
sort
lost.
center.
Oh boy, totally lost.
Totally lost. Feels pretty good here,
We
honestly.
just do it to this, right?
Yeah.
Do it to this, attack with both of these?
Because also, remember, Augur Bolus kind of sucks.
He does suck.
Like, just playing on his own. Only reason he's good is because they made him big.
Do we just amass again? Make a 9/9?
He doesn't have
And then we can aid
minutes
the, we
that
can just
way.
aid
I
the
say
fallen.
we attack first.
You don't want to get rid of this? Oh, we can do it instant. Yeah.
Yeah.
You attack with both? Is that risky?
Let's attack with him, at least. I don't know if we need to attack with Hero's Dambreaker.
It has menace also. Everything has menace. I'm fine with this trade. Wow.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to bounce Augur of Bolus and kill both of their other dudes? Because that seems like a really fun thing to do to me.
Yeah. I mean, they might counter it.
Maybe.
No, they don't have enough for a counter. They need 4. 4 for the Crush Descent. The other one doesn't counter this.
There might be like a Narset's Reversal or something, but that's pretty edge case.
Yeah.
See, that felt good to me.
That's a good go.
Do we want to Angrath now?
No,
I guess
it's
we
fine.
could do it next time and then aid the Fallen and put Angrath out again.
Yeah. Oh god.
Because that feels amazing.
11/11 a mass.
Woo! We're recurring this value, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah, remember this guy?
All right, miss.
Get a hit. Show us what you got.
No, don't get a hit, miss.
Get a hit. Stealth. It's the same
That's
card.
what he got!
It's the same card.
And it's gonna not be blockable. He's gonna kill us with it.
He can't attack this turn.
Oh, yeah.
And we have Obnix's Cruelty.
Let's just cruelty and roll in, right?
Yeah. Get this crap out of here.
And then I'll attack. And we finally get him below 20 damage.
I know.
But like, in one big swoop.
Yeah. Place in case he has a 5/5 haste creature.
Now we got him. We have got him now.
He act of treason.
Let's see that concede.
I was gonna say act of treason, then pumps our dude to kill
God.
us. That
That would be nuts,
I'm just
right?
saying. I'm just saying.
Oh man.
It's not impossible.
No. Or what's that one? It's not active treason. That's not in this set, is it?
No, there is one like it.
It's
though.
like the bonds of
Ooh,
something.
we got
protect
it.
those who
Ooh.
cannot
That's a good giant.
themselves.
Mythic reward.
We're 3 wins in, baby.
Feeling good. Feeling good.
Oh yeah. Ooh yeah. Ooh yeah.
Off. On.
Off on. Ooh, fire versus fire. Let's do it. Ooh-ya. That's fine, I guess. We have removal. We got a creature.
We got all our colors.
We good.
I like it.
Can't ask for much more in a limited hand. I could ask for another land, I guess. Sure. Ah, stupid bird.
I hate that bird.
Hey, we got Dreadnought. Meow.
Take this.
Ha! Your bird cannot block our cat.
For some reason, in Mace, your stabilize made me think of if you've seen Tropic Thunder, there's this point when they're showing the actual the movie that they were shooting earlier. Robert Downey Jr.'s character is like looking out the thing and he's like, "Survive! Survive!" As what's his name character, the Ben Stiller's character is like getting shot over and over again. That's why I think of stabilize,
Stabilize.
stabilize.
Just kill this Pegasus. I'm just gonna do that.
Yeah, I hate that Pegasus.
That Pegasus is too good.
I mean, it's not super good right now, but
It's good enough if they pump it, or just get another non-flyer. But now we're just dealing one back and forth.
tradesies.
Uh-oh. This thing is legit, though. It's the free proliferate, dude.
Proliferate. He doesn't have anything to make counters yet.
Don't jinx it.
So Shriek Diver can block it.
This is true. Whoops, I don't
Let's
need
put a
that.
swamp.
Yeah. Aiming. We could also just haste attack.
You could. Offer the trade.
They won't take it, there's no way. I'm not gonna do that. Let's just trade back and forth onesies. Forever. Can't block. Stop it. Get out of here.
Block it?
No, we can't. Has menace.
Oh.
Get out of here. Shoot. Unless you have a flash creature? Yeah, you don't. They must have that first strike thing again. The add a counter, give first strike. So now we have to be wary of blocking because that's going to be bad.
Tropic Thunder is just one of my favorite comedies. It's so funny. It's just phenomenally well done.
All right.
So do we want to block, kill the proliferate creature? I'm happy with that trade.
Here's the thing. If we don't block, they're still going to do it, and then it's going to get another counter. So, yes. I'm to 90% sure they have that. Yeah, there you go. So, we lose our dude, but they don't get another counter, but now we have to be wary of this thing goofing us. Which we have nothing we can do about it now, unless we bring back the bird. We could aid the fallen to bring it back.
Bring back the bird? That seems
It does!
weak.
Or this thing just gets more powerful every turn.
We couldn't have sacked it to Dreadmount, and we didn't know enough, did we?
Mm-mm. Or we can Skulker and just hope for the best.
Skulker might be our best play right now. Just like keep putting pressure on, make sure maybe they won't want to attack because of all the damage we can do.
I mean, they're going to attack every turn because we have no air blockers.
I know, but they might want to block.
I don't think they would.
Oh yeah, 'cause we can't be blocked.
Yeah.
either way.
Aid the Fallen, bring this guy. They have to have another thing to pump this. Which isn't impossible, but it's another turn spent. It's not the best use of cards.
I don't love 4 mana to make a 2/1, sometimes flyer.
It's 5 mana? I'm going to do it.
All right.
I'm going to do it because they have limited cards right now. And if this thing gets out of control, we are in serious trouble. Meow.
But how much does it cost for them to increase things with War Screecher?
6.
Yeah, so if they have a mana...
Nope.
No, they don't.
They goofed. Or they didn't draw land. Hey, we did it! We stopped the onslaught.
No, we didn't.
Well, they didn't attack. So we did.
Yeah, but they'll just get a land next turn and then do it.
I mean, yes, we can't stop it from doing that. We could time twist now, though.
I definitely don't time twist now.
Well, not now. I meant like in response to this doing that. Then it comes back as a 3/2, and we good again. You know? Know what I'm saying?
Sort of.
Okay.
I still think we're stimming
Holy
a blood
shit.
flow that's still...
Look at the birds they got.
Yeah, this one isn't feeling great.
Yeah, I mean, this many birds, I don't feel good about anything.
Everything is flying at us.
We don't have any mana sinks right now. Hey, birds! That feels good.
Yeah, I don't think there's any flash stuff here in this set. Really.
Says you.
Like, I think it's just not there. Taint. And May says so.
Sorry, did you say taint?
Taint. Taint nothing here.
Stop saying taint.
Tain't nothing in this set that flashes in.
We're gonna get kicked off of YouTube. Stop it.
Taint is completely fine.
They still haven't drawn that 6th land.
We can start getting some good Dreadmalkin sacks in.
I guess,
Like
but
that
then
could start being a real threat. When we could like chump block something when we have to, and like
oh, I see.
sack the amass token and start getting like more out of that. Do you not? Should we not just play Ashiok Skulker?
No. Oh, to block
We
this
should
guy?
have done. I think we should have done that first, and then we would have had Teferi's Time Twist still up. Because then we can start putting pressure on.
Yep. Yep, you're right. Although, it costs 4 to do that.
No.
So if we attack...
We
nope.
could have. It doesn't matter. We can keep it up as a blocker and then start attacking.
The only blocker we can block is this guy. On the ground anyways. Wow.
Oh,
I mean, they have no life gain.
yeah, but
As of now.
they just have something every turn.
Yeah, I know. This is... I mean, we're keeping up, though.
There are no beans in play. You've got not much time probably to put one in play.
Casca's finisher.
Oh, okay, we could get something with that. But what? But what?
I mean, if
Vraska's finisher is also a good Teferi's Time Twist target.
Also true.
Because if we
It
play
happens an instant, yeah.
and we block something and Teferi's Time Twist, ba-bum, kills the thing, brings it back with a +1.
So we should definitely make this go off now, right? Like, let's attempt...
Let's attack. See, they gotta block something, right?
I mean, they don't have to. They have 19 health. They don't have to do anything.
Sure.
Like, if we attack with the Aven, they're probably, like, double block here. In which case, we're boned. We only get to kill one, they kill one. It's not really a gain.
We could attack with, like, Dreadmalkin. And then...
Show me what you got!
Then we could
Let's sack this dude.
sack him to actually, like, get something.
So we get to kill one.
And it doesn't die, does it?
Yeah, we become a 3/3.
Yeah. So yeah, let's...
And it doesn't die, yeah.
Awesome. We get to kill both.
No, we get to kill one.
Then we drop Vraska's finisher.
Oh, yes, from that. No, we can't, because we have to do 3 damage to one. To kill one.
You're right. Yeah,
So-
yeah, it won't be enough. Okay,
Unless we sack
still
another
fine.
creature.
I still think we play Vraska's finisher.
Do we?
Because then we can Teferi's Time Twist it next turn. If on, like, something we block.
But it doesn't do
Oh,
anything.
we can't do it right now.
It doesn't do anything.
What do you mean?
It doesn't do anything if we do this now.
Right now, sure.
But then we can't save the
It is
twist.
a body that we can...
We also can't save the twist then.
Well, yeah. All right, we can hold off. I just think we need
That worked out real
blockers.
well. That worked out fine.
Yeah, that was good.
Damn. They still haven't drawn that 6th land. That's wild.
Yeah, right? Because they're going to rock us as soon as they draw a 6th land.
Okay. Do we do this plan again?
Attack with Dreadmalkin? Sure.
Like we could just sack this guy? And they have no mana up. If they don't block, they take 3, we'll play the Skulker. They do
Yeah.
block. Let's play Skulker.
I like that. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I mean, now we're going to probably take 3 in the air. Oh, they got the 6th land.
James Roden,
And
thank you for the donation.
thank you, James. They gain
Much
5,
appreciated.
gain 5 life and they have a 3/6.
Oh, crap. Well, we can...
Oh no! Primate's going off!
We have our Vraska's finisher trick we can do next turn
Sure.
to use it on their turn.
Do we loot? I don't think we loot, right? We need both of these.
Well, we can just discard whatever we get if we loot and we don't like it.
I guess that's true. Let's hope it's a land. Shit.
That's fine. We're not going to use Angrath.
Angrath's not better in this case? To give everything menace?
Would you rather have... I don't think our things having menace is going to win.
But it makes dudes.
Makes one dude.
No grass. Oh, is that swamp?
All right.
We keep that for looting this turn.
Yeah, let's play Vraska's finisher.
What now?
Yeah, because then we can block something and Teferi's Time Twist. We're never going to attack and get the value out of it.
Well, we're gonna attack now, right?
I guess.
We also unblockably
I think we kind of
attack.
just need to block. I don't think we're really in a position to be attacking.
Let's see what they do. They're just gonna take it.
Because they're just going to kill us. They have 6 now. We need to block us.
I mean, this could be a blocker.
Yeah.
We just have 17 left. We're nowhere near in danger of dying. Unless they play a Johnny or something. Yeah, there's that.
I think we are pretty in danger of dying.
We're gonna be fine. Trust me.
I do not trust you.
Okay, well,
I do not trust you.
then don't.
Not this time. We'll get one of their dudes.
Okay, so blockers. So this blocks. Is there anything favorable for that to block?
Nope.
So let's just block a big thing. This can block here fine.
Yeah.
Um,
What are we killing?
I think we have to kill this because it's gonna give everything a bunch of counters.
Sure. Are we not?
Well, actually, what
Okay.
we can do is double block here, which means this thing will die no matter what.
And then kill something that...
And then kill something that like, yeah, on the ground, like
So
this
we've
giant.
got to kill the giant because we're going to be flashing the finisher. It's not going to deal damage to it.
Right. That's fine. I'm fine killing the giant. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So block.
And then before going to damage,
Right.
we've got to...
We gotta twist some time.
She didn't come back immediately, right? She comes back at the end of turn.
End of turn. Ow.
And now we're super dead.
I mean, yeah. Oh, cool. Just pick for me.
It was the only option.
Yeah, I know, but that's kind of cool. Oh,
Neat.
we don't need this lane. Hey, totally lost. That's not.
Not terrible.
That's actually not bad. We can play both. Wait, can we? Oh no, we're one away from playing both. Wait, how much can we attack for? 7.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Not enough.
Not enough, but pretty good.
Yes!
So in the air, we lose, we die. So we have to totally lost this thing,
Yes.
but not now.
Right. We should do it after they... I think we're going to die either way in the air, because they're going to... Even if we get rid of one, they still kill us in the air.
No, because this thing has to attack or pump.
Oh,
Can't do
right,
that.
because that's the tap to do it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We don't have... We can't Kesmina, right?
I'm gonna attack on the ground with something though.
What do we need blockers-wise? So 4 blockers will kill their things. So, wait, we want to hold back Vraska, because she can trade. The others can't.
This can trade, and this can trade.
No, they're going to be one bigger.
Oh, if they pump some? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so just the cat then.
Sure.
Because we gotta get some damage in.
Yeah.
Okay. Shift the turn, let's see what happens.
I still think we're dead. But
very likely.
we at least can possibly survive this turn.
Oh, this makes a flyer too. Nope, we lose.
What does?
This thing makes something fly.
Yes, we are dead. We did.
So I have to totally lost this, and we'll take 3 in the air.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We take 4. And it gets a counter.
But we're not quite dead.
No, we're not dead.
We are being annoying to this person. Well, let's kill the pride mate.
Yes, and then let's block here and then loot,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Goodbye, island. One's not done.
And then,
Hey, birds!
does that save us? Does it let us? No, it doesn't, because we only,
Yeah, we only had one air block.
because there's 2.
Well,
So let's play Kasmina, let's loot, and then let's concede.
yep, that's true. If we get callous dismissal.
It's us or them. Choose the rights. My students
Nope, that's a
are
land.
loyal
Nope.
and brilliant.
Good game.
Good game.
Damn, they had like
Good
all
game.
birds.
Welp! Oh no, beans.
Were there
Somebody
beans
bought
in there?
beans.
No! No, it's past 11. Dom has to eat them.
Yep, that is the rules.
Dom, come over here and
All right.
eat a bean.
Looks like we're ending the night
Dom,
in ignominious defeat.
Dom, come over here and eat a bean with us.
Where is our cup?
Chat says that's not what beans are for.
I know, but you do it for funsies.
Where did our cup go?
Cup what? The
champion
Monument
cup.
of Victory? Oh, here it is. The Monument of Victory is right here.
The monument to victory. We put the beans in, and then we immediately take the beans out.
All right, everybody.
Beans.
That's our
Oh.
last game for Mana Dorks. And do you want to trade?
No, not at all. Because the fail case on this one is toothpaste, which is fine.
Yeah, I want toothpaste, not barf or whatever the fuck this is gonna be.
Ah!
Cheers.
Cheers.
No, please don't, please don't.
It's toothpaste, and it's great.
No. Ah. Oh my god, I've never had it. It's so bad.
Oh god.
Oh, boy.
What is that one?
Blah.
That's stink bug.
Blah. Blah.
Bye, Grav.
Blah.
Hey, oh my god. Oh, the smell of that one just hit me. Holy shit.
Oh, God.
Whoa! Oh, that's bad. Well, Grav is dead.
So bad.
Only me now. I'm the only mana dork. You guys bolted the bird. That's what happened there. Did we make it to the tokens level? We're a little bit behind.
It's okay, I got enough work to do, guys. It's fine.
Well, everyone, if you want to in like the next 3 minutes
Nope.
donate up to the token thing, you can
Shut up.
give Grav more work to do.
Shut up.
But as it is now, thank you all for joining us. Oh, do we want to do the raffle pull now?
Yes.
Let's do it. Let's raffle some
Okay,
pull.
so if you donated if you tipped $2 or more this entire night, you are in the raffle to get a Guilds of Ravnica bundle.
Signed
they're
by
great.
us. We'll sign it.
So yeah, let's sign. That's silly, but let's do it.
No one cares. Don't sign it.
We're not gonna sign it. We don't want to have to open it.
We'll put a message on it, though.
Yeah,
We'll put a secret message on it.
yeah.
Also, we'll send you some beans.
So, did everyone have a good time tonight? Because I had a good time.
Yeah, I think we won more than we lost.
I think so too.
And our ranked run was real good.
Yeah, well, they're not ranked, constructed. Whatchamacallit.
Oh, right. Yeah, well, I guess we could just do ranked now.
Yeah.
We're good
We
enough.
could just try and climb the ladder a little bit. But the constructed event went really well.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
7
I
and
really
1.
liked Feather. This deck was pretty fun.
All right, Dom's doing his thing.
All right.
Here it comes.
It's
It's in the Kindle. All right.
I'm gonna keep. Has it shown up?
Yeah, I just wanted to keep doing this. Okay, and the winner of the raffle is Bowtie Guy James Roden.
Bowtie Guy!
Guy!
Man, so Bowtie Guy is gonna get a bunch of tokens.
Yeah,
And
and a bunch of cards.
a Ravnica bundle.
Yeah, congrats! I can just send that all in one big bundle. I can get it to Dom.
Nice.
I save a couple stamps.
Congratulations, Bowtie Guy.
Yay, you won!
And thank all of you for coming in tonight and supporting us and helping the show. If you like this show and you want to see more of it, you know, tweet about us stuff.
DM Dom directly on Twitter.
Let him
He's
know.
At Gadzook.
Tweet about it. Talk about it.
Is it at
Let people know.
There might be more. Anyways,
knows?
Find Dom on Twitter and directly tweet him stories about how much this show has changed your life.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, please stop.
Matters so deeply.
Please stop sending me stories. The show will continue. But do it
Oh,
anyways.
we hate Dom so much.
No, we don't. We love him. Thank
No,
you,
he's
Dom.
great. We
Thank
love
you, Dom,
him.
for running the show and making this happen. Before we got here, I was like, what if we did it on YouTube? He's like, yep, we can do that. I'm like, cool. We can just do that. We can just make things happen.
So, Dom has been sitting here being... What's the bot we normally have? He's been
D20
bot.
D20 bot.
For tonight.
I mean, technically, he's always been D20 bot.
Yes.
But yes, thank you, Dom, for running the cameras. Our next show on Saving Throw Show is Friday night. It's Wildcards. It's me and
Wildcards.
Jordan are on it. 8 p.m. Pacific. It's us going to college and spooky stuff happens.
Dom is also on it.
Dom is also on it. I always forget Dom exists when he's not on this couch. And I feel like that's more his fault than mine. Because, like, I'm like an animal and, like, object permanence is a thing.
Definitely.
Anyways.
And we have sunglasses on, so
and
we
have
can't
sunglasses.
see him.
Yeah, he's not there. Anyways, tune in for that. And also, if you're going to be going to Gen Con in 3 weeks here, we're going to be there.
Yay!
Me, Jordan, Dom, and a bunch of other Saving Throw people. So please, if you're going to be there, hit us up. Check out our Discord. We're going to be talking about doing the meetup and probably going to be playing some Magic. We're going to play Magic all weekend when we're there.
Definitely playing some Magic.
So please bring your decks. I don't have any standard decks, but I will have a Commander and Pauper and Modern.
I have a slightly outdated standard deck, but it's still good, so I'm going to bring it.
Okay.
And that'll be great.
As long as it's still legal.
It is legal.
Okay, then it's fine. That's it for everything here. Congrats to the winner, James Roden, and thank you everybody for supporting the show. PAX Unplugged, Dom might be going to PAX Unplugged. I'm going to PAX West. Maybe I'll go to PAX Unplugged if Dom convinces me.
Yeah.
If he
Go
sweet,
to PAX Unplugged.
if he sweet talks me.
Yeah, who knows what the future holds?
Yeah. Anyways, thank you all for everything tonight. Should we do the thing I've written out here? Or do you want to do something different so we screwed up?
Do we want to do tap down?
I mean, I feel like we're out of mana, but are we done dorking?
Okay. All right, let's do it. Ready?
All right.
Okay.
And Dom, you have to cut at the right time this time.
Okay, ready?
The one time we're going to do the right intro. I'll do the first line, you do the second line.
Okay.
We're all out of mana!
So I guess we're done dorking.
Dom,
Yeah, you're up.
Yay! Wait, are we actually out?
do you actually...
Did he actually cut us?
I don't know.
Dom is a monster.
Dom, did you?
Dom, you're history's greatest monster.
I'm going to show my nipples!
Oh my
I'm
god.
going to show my nipples,
We're on
Dom!
YouTube, it doesn't matter.
Oh no! Oh no!
Check out my nipples, everybody!